38.4 points. MDDS in Rishimune Chair say, importem ahodoɔ dodoɔ no a ɛnhyehyɛ wɔn nneɛma yie. Ɛna ɛfɔm egudie aketua ho sika no nso. Wɔnom ntutu ne yie koraa. Saa adansie kyerɛ sɛ, ɛfɔm egudie sikasɛm ntotoyɛ nyɛ koraa. Na wɔn nsusuasoɔ bɔne de ma ɔman ne kanko. Ɛnkanka ɛwɔ importem a yɛtu egudie wɔ Ghana. Sɛ yɛpɛ sɛ yɛsiesie ɔhaw a ɛwɔ Ghana aban so ɛwɔ mantem a ɛnam ɛfɔm egudie sikasɛm so a, ɛsɛ sɛ biribiara da hɔ pefee. Na nkontabuo so kɔ so krogyen. Na yɛni nso kɔ dwumadie a yɛtwa sika atoɔ sɛ yɛde kɔdi ne so. Ghana wɔ asase mu egudie bebree. Na egudie bia yɛbɛtu efiri asase mu no. Ɛyɛ mining companies ne tua ɛfɔm egudie toɔ a yɛfrɛ no royalties. Ɛma Minerals Income Investment Fund, ɛyɛ MIIF. Na sɛ yɛka ɛfɔm egudie toɔ a yɛgyegye ne nyinaa bɔ mu a, emu ɔhamu nkyekyɛmu aduɔtwe na yɛde to aban fotuo mu a yɛfrɛ no Consolidated Fund, ɛma aban de yɛ mpontonnwuma. Emu ɔhamu nkyekyɛmu aduonu a ɛbɛka no, yɛde ɛno ɛkɔto Minerals Development Fund, ɛyɛ MDF account ne mu. Saa kyɛfa yi, ɛwɔ hɔ ma aban nnwumakuo ahodoɔ bi te sɛ district ɛne municipal assemblies ɛne traditional authorities a ɛfɔm egudie tuo kɔ so wɔ wɔn mpɔtam mu. Saa ɔhamu nkyekyɛmu aduonu yi, yɛde emu ɔhamu nkyekyɛmu edu ɛkɔ MDF secretariat na yɛahwɛ ne sɛ ɔhamu nkyekyɛmu ɔha. Ɛkwan yɛfa so hwɛ saa kyɛfa yi so ɛna edidi so yi. Yɛde emu ɔhamu nkyekyɛmu aduonan ɛkɔboa Mining Communities Development Scheme, ɛyɛ MCDS, a Local Management Committees, ɛyɛ LMCs, na ɛhwɛ so wɔ amansin mu. Afei, yɛde ɔhamu nkyekyɛmu du a aka no hyɛ Office of Administrator of Stool Lands, ɛyɛ OASL no nsa. Na yɛafa no sɛ ɔhamu nkyekyɛmu ɔha. Saa sika yi, emu ɔhamu nkyekyɛmu edu na OASL office de yɛ wɔn krataa nnwuma nyinaa. Emu ɔhamu nkyekyɛmu eduokron a aka no, ne nkutabuo ɛna edidi so yi. Emu ɔhamu nkyekyɛmu aduonum enum kɔ district assemblies. Ɔhamu nkyekyɛmu aduonum nso kɔ stool lands hɔ. Ɛna emu ɔhamu nkyekyɛmu aduonu kɔ traditional councils hɔ. Saa ɛfɔm egudie ho akatua yi te sɛ aba a ɛsɛ sɛ yɛdua ma yɛ man no nyin. Titiru ɛwɔ mantem a yɛtu ɛfɔm egudie paa. Nanso yɛbɛyɛ den etumi ahwɛ sɛ ɛfɔm egudie ho akatua yi yɛhwɛ so yie. Wei ne CDD-Ghana Mining District Development Scorecard ana MDDS kuo ne trimupɔ. Ɛfɔm egudie akatua no mu ɔhamu nkyekyɛmu aduonum num a ɛkɔ district assemblies hɔ no. MDDS efidie ne botae ne sɛ ɛbɛhwɛ sɛ nea wɔhwɛ sika no so yie. Na ɔmo de yɛ ne ɛsɛ fata nso. Ɛna yɛni san ɛwɔ ɔhamu nkyekyɛmu aduanan a wɔde ama local management committees sɛ wɔde bɛboa mining communities development schemes a LMCs na ɛhwɛ so wɔ importem a yɛtu egudie nyinaa mu. Kwan bɛn so na wɔyi betumi ayɛ adwuma. MDDS ne nam nneɛma etitiriw num so de yɛ adwuma de hwɛ sɛnea aban gyinamsifoɔ a wɔn mo mantem no de sika a wɔnyɛ firi egudie tuo akatua mu no di dwuma. Nneɛma num yi wɔ afa ahoroɔ aduonu mmienu. Ɛne nneɛma ɔha aduonum a wɔde yɛ nhwehwɛmu. Hyehyɛ wɔ nnwumadie mmara kwan so kamakama. MDDS wɔ akadeɛ a wɔde hwɛ sɛnea mantem ahodoɔ no hwɛ hyehyɛ wɔ nnwumadie mmara kwan so kamakama. Ɛna wɔn ne wɔn a ɛte importem no so didi nkɔmɔ hunu nea ɛrekɔ so biara. Na aboa ma wɔn etumi ehu district a wɔnom ɛrebɔ wɔn ho mmɔden. Importem bia ɛwɔ kwan soronko a MDDS fa so de hwɛ wɔ nnwuma ahodoɔ nyinaa mu frenkyem. Enti yɛn nnwumadie yi wohu ne sɛn. Afe 2023 a etwa mu yi no, MDDS hyehyɛ importem ahodoɔ ɛne wɔ mmɔdenbɔ. Ɔfa ne sɛ ɛsɛ sɛ nka mantem biara bɔ mmɔden nya 100 points a bebree no anya 38.4 points. MDDS nhwehwɛmu no kyerɛ sɛ Impotem ahodoɔ dodoɔ no a ɛnhyehyɛ wɔn nneɛma yie. Ɛna ɛfam egudie aketua ho sika no nso wɔnom ntutu ne yie koraa. Saa adansie kyerɛ sɛ ɛfam egudie sikasɛm ntotoyɛ nyɛ koraa. Na wɔn nsusuasoɔ bɔne de ma ɔman ne kanko. Ɛnkanka ɛwɔ impotem a yɛtu egudie wɔ Ghana. Sɛ yɛpɛ sɛ yɛsiesie ɔhaw a ɛwɔ Ghana aban so ɛwɔ mantemu a ɛnam ɛfam egudie sikasɛm so a ɛsɛ sɛ biribiara da hɔ pefee. Na nkontabuo so kɔ so krogyen. Na yɛni nso kɔ dwumadi a yɛtwa sika atoɔ sɛ
Scorecard, which is, basically a tool for assessing and ranking the quality of transparency, accountability, and citizen participation in the transfer, management, and utilization of mineral resources. And I'm sure there are many of us who are interested in transparency and accountability, but most importantly, in citizen participation. We've been talking about participatory democracy for a very long time now. And when it comes to the management of our mineral resources, it's important that we find that also at that level. So we'll continue with the program. We'll invite Dr. Edem Selome, who is Director of Research and Knowledge Management of CDD-Ghana, to give us the welcome address.
Good morning. It's working? Good morning. I'm following from his example. I see a lot of dignitaries here, but I'm not going to go through all of that. I'll just say all protocols observed, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Is it working? Or I should use which one? This one. It's working. On behalf, is it working? On behalf, yes. On behalf of the board, management, and staff of CDD-Ghana, a warm welcome to you to the launch of the 2023 Mining District Development Scorecard, what we call the MDDS report. It is a CDD social accountability initiative, the first of its kind in Ghana. This report represents a significant advancement in our efforts to strengthen transparency, accountability, and inclusive development in our mining districts. CDD-Ghana has been at the forefront of promoting social accountability initiatives in the last decade and a half. Our work in this area stems from a deep commitment to empowering citizens and ensuring that public officials are held accountable for their decisions and actions, particularly during periods between elections. Our social accountability projects are designed to give citizens a voice in governance, enabling them to demand transparency, accountability from their leaders. Specifically, our work in social accountability seeks to bridge the gap between government actions and the needs of the people, particularly in sectors where mismanagement can profoundly impact local communities. The MDDS report, and sometimes I think it's MMDS, but the MDDS report is not just another document. It is a pioneering tool designed to assess and rank the performance of Ghana's mining districts in terms of how well they manage mineral revenue. And for the first time, we have a comprehensive scorecard that evaluates governance dimensions, fiscal transparency, local government effectiveness, citizen participation, and the efficiency of mineral royalty utilization. This initiative, led by CDD-Ghana, is a testament to our commitment to ensuring that the wealth generated from our natural resources benefits all Ghanaians, particularly those in mining communities. This report is a result of rigorous data collection and analysis across 8 mineral-rich districts in Ghana. Among the noteworthy findings, Birim North, and I won't give all of it away, so don't worry a while. Birim North District emerged as a top-ranked district, highlighting the exemplary practices in transparency and governance. However, as with many things in Ghana, the overall performance across districts indicates that much work still needs to be done. The average score of 38.4 out of 100 points reflects significant challenges in governance practices at a local level. The findings again underscore the need for urgent reforms to improve transparency, accountability, and citizen engagement in mining mineral revenues. One of the critical areas highlighted in the report is environmental governance, and I don't think that's a surprise. The findings reveal that while some districts are making strides in managing their resources, others still grapple with environmental degradation and inefficient use of mineral revenues. This disconnect between resource wealth and local development outcomes must be addressed to achieve sustainable growth and development. Today's launch, again, is not just presentation of data. It is a call to action. It calls on all stakeholders, government agencies, local authorities, civil societies like us, the private sector, and media to use these findings to drive meaningful conversations and meaningful change. The MDDS provide us a roadmap for enhancing governance practices, ensuring that revenue from our mineral resources are managed effectively and transparently, and ultimately benefiting communities and those most affected by mining activities. I will urge all of us to reflect on the findings when it's presented and consider how we can contribute to improving governance in our mining districts. Let us take up the challenge to ensure that the benefits of Ghana's mineral wealth are equitably distributed for development and for improved livelihoods. But finally, before I take my seat, I want to take a moment to express our deepest gratitude to the Ford Foundation for their generous funding for this project. Without their partnership, this pioneering initiative would not have been possible. A huge thank you to the project team led by Awal Mohammed, where are you? Supported by Emmanuel Yeboah, Kojo Asante, Daniel Amato, Suedu Abdullahi, and Eugene Boache for their hard work in bringing this vital project to fruition. Also to our COSO partners who actually helped us collect the data from the various districts. And so I thank you very much for honoring our invitation to this meeting, to the launch, and I hope that we'll have a very productive discussions when the report is finally launched. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adam Salome. But an average of 38% is definitely not a good score. Even in the past at the universities in Ghana, the pass mark was 40. It means that all the 8 districts failed, which means we're not doing the right things. But of course, that's why we're here, because at the end of it all, we'll be able to tell what must improve and what must change. We'll now take some solidarity remarks, and we'll start with the Director of Policy and Planning at the Office of the Administrator of Stool Lands, Surveyor Ebenezer Arthur. Let's welcome him with a round of applause.
Thank you, Winston, for the introduction. I also want to stand on existing protocols, but where I'm coming from, we pay reverence to Nananum, So I acknowledge Nananum and Nime Name who are here. Thank you very much. We also thank CDD for the opportunity to give these remarks on a very important work that they've done, the Mining District Development Scorecard. Before I give the remarks, I want to tell you a little about the Office of the Administrator of Stool Lands, because some of you will be wondering why we are here giving these remarks. The office is a creation of the 1992 Constitution, Article 267, and then we have Act 481, Office of the Administrator of Stool Lands, Act 1994. And our main function is to mobilize stool land revenue, including rents, dues, royalties, concession rents, vested land revenue, and all other payments that emanate from stool lands, and then disperse it to stated beneficiaries in the Act. And according to the Act, we are to take 10% of the revenues we mobilize as administrative charges, after which the remainder becomes 100%. And then we disperse it as follows: 25% to stools, 20% to traditional authorities, and 55% to district assemblies within the area where these revenues were mobilized. As an office, our core values are integrity, service, transparency, equity, accountability. So from the discussions, you could see where we are coming from. We are committed to the ideals of this scorecard. And then we also hope to collaborate effectively with CDD in the implementation of this endeavor. As an office, we also do so many things. We consult with two land authorities and traditional leaders, and then we are to give them information and data. So it means that we are also to be transparent in whatever we do. We assist in demarcation of customary lands and boundaries and resolution of intractable land disputes and research into customary land matters. Now, we have some remarks. The OSL acknowledges the CDD in the work that they've done. This is a groundbreaking research into uncharted areas of revenue utilization at the local level. We want to congratulate CDD for this feat and assure them of OSL support for this endeavor. Some of us have been in the trenches trying to fight for this transparency and other things. At some point in time, we were told that your work ends after you've given the money. You don't have anything to do thereafter. But now we have others joining us. We've been fighting with Wacom and so on over the years. OSL has, over the 28 years of establishment, advocated for sustainable and efficient use of stool lands revenue for local development. Thus, in the OSL regulations, which was promulgated in 2019, that is Regulation 2377, we have provided, in fact, we made these provisions and then Parliament agreed with us. So in the regulations, the MMDAs are enjoined to use these revenues largely for development. In the past, we didn't have that. They are also to label the projects funded with stool land revenue as such. And then the office, is through the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, is to issue guidelines on the utilization of stool land revenue. Hello? Yes, and lastly, we are to monitor and report to the minister on the utilization of stool land revenue by MDDS. OSS is also a member of the multi-stakeholder group of the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, EITI, and is therefore committed to issues of transparency and accountability. We concede that our efforts at ensuring transparency, accountability, participation is only a small part of a bigger work of ensuring inclusive development at the local level. Multi-actors such as CSOs, NGOs, and other state and non-state actors are to partner us in the delivery of this agenda. The objects of the Mining District Development Scorecard aligns with our values, as I alluded to earlier on. For OSL, the MDDS2 is a call to duty as an organization committed to transparency and accountability. The tool will no doubt help strengthen and expand the dialogue we have with our stakeholders and thereby enhance the socio-economic development of the mineral resource-rich districts. As an organization, we see ourselves in the recommendations of the MDDS. We have a critical role to play in ensuring that these recommendations are carried through. Indeed, OSL has started working on some of the recommendations in the MDDS. For instance, we have developed a draft guideline on the utilization of stool land revenue, including mineral royalties and mineral concession rents. We will be having stakeholder engagements on the guidelines soon, and we invite CDD to be part. Also, in the area of strengthening transparency and accountability by publicizing information about the allocation and utilization of mineral royalties, we have been publishing payments of mineral royalties in the dailies in line with EITI recommendations, but we need to decentralize these publications, so there's still more to be done. Concluding my remarks, we want to assure CDD and our stakeholders that we are committed to ensuring that we work together as a team to increase transparency, accountability, participation in the payments and utilization of mineral royalties for effective socioeconomic outcomes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Surveyor Ebenezer Arthur, who's Director of Policy and Planning, Office of the Administrator of Stool Lands. We'll also have a brief solidarity remark from Benjamin Ayi, who's Advisor on Mines at the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources. Let's welcome him with a round of applause.
Mr. Chairman, Nanano, if I may stand on the protocols established in the interest of time. May I say that it was my chief director who was invited to this meeting. An emergency matter came up this morning, and he's asked me to read his statement on his behalf, so I'm going to do just that. It is my privilege to participate and especially to address you distinguished. Hello. It is my privilege to participate and especially to get to address you distinguished participants at the launch of a Mining District Development's Scorecard MDDS report. On behalf of the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, I hereby extend our heartfelt gratitude to the Ghana Center for Democratic Development, CDD-Ghana, for inviting us to share the honor of this platform. We commend the CDD for its unwavering commitment to enhancing transparency, accountability, and citizen participation in the management of our nation's mineral resources. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, while transparency alone is not the panacea to achieving our development goals, government through the ministry responsible for mining is a believer in employing transparency, accountability, and citizen participation as effective tools in the development process at the grassroots, catalyzed by the use of our mineral resources. Mr. Chairman, indeed, it is in this context that, firstly, government decided to return a part of mineral royalties received by government to the local communities from which they are mined through the Minerals Development Fund as far back as 1993. It is also in this same context that in 2007, Ghana signed onto the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative to become the first country globally to do so on the back of its hard rock minerals rather than oil and gas. Again, it is because of this that Ghana championed transparency at the subnational level within the EITI framework. More recently, the piloting of EITI multi-stakeholder approach at the local level at Elembele and Pristia Huni Valley assemblies bear testimony to this. With this background, we believe that the MDDS is not just going to be another report. It should be a beacon of hope and testament to the power of collective and cooperative action and evidence-based governance. By measuring and ranking the quality of transparency, accountability, and citizen participation in the 8 mineral resource-rich municipalities and districts, the MDDS should provide us with a clearer framework and roadmap for more comprehensively improving socioeconomic development outcomes from the bottom up across our nation. Ladies and gentlemen, the districts and municipalities highlighted in this report are at the heart of Ghana's mining industry. These communities have long been the backbone of our mineral wealth, and we believe that it is only fitting that they reap the benefits of their contribution through improved governance and development. This is what, along with the Mineral Development Fund, the local broad-based, management-based mining community development scheme seeks to achieve. Mr. Chairman, it is our expectation that the findings of the MDDS report will underscore the importance of transparency and accountability in the management of mineral revenues. It is through these principles that we can ensure that the wealth generated from our natural resources is used to foster inclusive development, reduce inequalities, and improve the quality of life of all Ghanaians. As we gather here today, let us reaffirm our commitment to these and other principles of good governance. Let us pledge to use the insights from the MDDS report to drive meaningful change in our communities. The ministry stands ready to collaborate with all stakeholders, the governments, ministries and agencies, the Chamber of Mines, municipal and district assemblies, traditional authorities, and civil society organizations to implement the recommendations of this report in a way to ensure that our mining revenues and indeed other benefits are managed in a way that benefits all. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to take this opportunity to again commend CDD-Ghana for its dedication to this cause and to thank the Ford Foundation for its support in making this project a reality. Your efforts are a shining example of how partnerships can drive progress and create lasting impacts. In concluding, Mr. Chairman, let us remember that the true measure of our success lies not in just the wealth and other benefits we generate, but more importantly, how these are applied to equitably transform our lives for both today and tomorrow. Together, let us build a future where every Ghanaian can share in the prosperity of our nation's natural resources. Together, we can ensure that mining in Ghana benefits both the present and future generations. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Benjamin Aye. And of course, you end on a very important note that we must build a future where every Ghanaian can share in the prosperity of our natural resources, or mineral resources. We now invite Frederick Edujemfi, who is Director of Programs and Operations at CDD-Ghana, to introduce the chairperson for today's occasion. Let's welcome Frederick with a round of applause.
Thank you very much, Winston. And I'm comforted by the solidarity remarks, and I'm expecting that post the launch, we will continue to engage. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to introduce our chairperson for today's national launch of the Mining District Development Scorecard report. Clara Cassati is an accomplished lawyer, consultant, and academic with over 15 years of practice experience across multiple disciplines. Clara is currently a lecturer at the University of Ghana, where she teaches legal aspects of migration at the Center for Migration Studies and Labor Law, and Ghana Legal Systems at the School of Law. Her expertise in mediation, arbitration, and reconciliation is well recognized. And she currently serves as a visiting fellow at the Harvard Law School since February 2024. She also leads the Casa Law Firm as head of chambers. Beyond academia, Clara is a seasoned consultant with extensive experience in legal and regulatory frameworks, institutional assessment, and policy analysis, both nationally and internationally. Her commitment to social justice and inclusivity is evident in her various roles, including serving as a member of Ghana's multi-stakeholder working group on the Human Rights Council, vice chair of the network of legal experts on migration in West and Central Africa, and chairperson of the Constitution Review Consultative Committee for Ghana's 1992 Constitution. Clara is also deeply involved in civil society. She serves as the vice chairperson of the Board of Governors of CDD-Ghana, where she helps steer one of Ghana's leading non-governmental organizations in research and advocacy on democracy, social justice, and inclusivity. Additionally, she is a member of the Public Interest and Accountability Committee, where she chairs the Legal Subcommittee. Clara's contributions to academia, law, and social justice are widely recognized, and she has authored several papers on topics including migration, gender, labor, law, and institutional assessment. Her membership in professional bodies such as the Ghana Bar Association, the Network of Legal Experts on Migration in West and Central Africa, and the African Mobility Scholars Association underscores her deep engagement with critical legal and social issues. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Clara Cassati as she leads us through today's event. Thank you very much.
Madam Chairperson, please, your remarks.
Thank you very much, Winston, and thank you very much, Frederick, for all those very kind words that you say to me. Nananom Nime Name. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to the national launch of the Maiden Mining Districts Development Scorecard, the MDDS project. Dr. Salome has said a lot already, so I'm going to be very brief, but I will rehash the points that I think need to be rehashed. As we all know already, the MDDS is an innovative and robust tool designed to assess and rank the levels of transparency, accountability, and citizen participation in managing mineral resources in mineral resource-rich districts in Ghana. This tool provides stakeholders, including local government authorities, traditional authorities, mining companies, civil society actors, media, and citizens with evidence of how districts are performing in the governance, management, and utilization of mineral royalties. The aim is to improve the socio-economic development outcomes in these districts. Ladies and gentlemen, everyone gathered here today is already aware that although revenues from extractive mineral resources such as gold, bauxite, and diamond significantly contribute to government revenue, but same has in most cases not led to inclusive socio-economic development outcomes, particularly in rural communities where mining activities occur. And this has resulted in the phenomenon known as the local resource curse. The challenge has thus persisted through the African people's hopes after gaining independence that we would manage these resources for the benefit of the African people. In the search of findings, the most inclusive ways of managing natural resources for the benefit of the entire nation, Ghana has been one of the countries that has sought to create a legal framework that includes the decentralization of a portion of mineral royalty revenues to communities to address the challenges of the local resource curse and transform mineral rich communities into certain development outcomes. So at least we have acknowledged from the very beginning that something needs to be done, and we have attempted to do that in the legal framework that we have designed. But this notwithstanding, as the research has shown, when you go into the communities, you do not see that we have achieved the desired outcomes. So in search of finding the most inclusive ways, so the stark reality as it is today is that the current framework, although very well intentioned, is not achieving the desired outcomes of inclusive economic growth for mining communities. An assessment of the current framework for transparency and accountability and citizen participation in managing mineral resources in mineral resource-rich districts in Ghana is therefore imperative. It is in this vein, and in line with the CDD's mission to ensure a free, peaceful, and well-governed democracy in Ghana and in other parts of Africa, that CDD-Ghana, with support from the Ford Foundation, has developed this innovative and robust tool aimed at tracking the transfer, management, and utilization of mineral resource royalties in mineral resource-rich districts in Ghana. The MDDS tool will contribute efforts to improve mining revenue governance in Ghana. Although Dr. Salome has already expressed gratitude, I think we cannot thank the people who have assisted us in this enough. So I would still like to offer my deepest appreciation to the Ford Foundation for their generous funding for this important project. I also thank immensely the core team members for their invaluable contributions through drafts, reviews, audits, and overall project management. So I would like to mention them. And they are Mr. Mohammed Awal, Mr. Emmanuel Yeboah, Dr. Kojo Asante, Professor H. Kwesi Prempe, Mr. Daniel Ama Ato, Mr. Kakra Edu, Mr. Richard Anani, and Mr. Amadou Isaka. Thank you very much for the work that you have done to give us this tool that is to be launched today. Special recognition also as well is due to Ms. Nanama Nate and Ms. Celestine Kwe for preparing the report for publication. I thank greatly as well all the field officers for their exceptional work during the data collection phase. My sincere appreciation as well to the Minerals Development Fund Secretariat, the Minerals Commission, Office of the Administrator of Stool Lands, Ghana Chamber of Mines, Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development, Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, Office of the Head of the Local Government Service, the Ghana Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative, and all the projects, the 8 project municipal and district assembly. Their unwavering support and assistance in providing administrative data were instrumental in the analysis and construction of the MDDS scorecard. My deep appreciation as well to the moderators and then the panelists for today's discussion, as we look forward to an engaging session during the panel discussion. And last but certainly not the least, thanks to you all, our esteemed partners, for joining us today for this important launch. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to reiterate that although by law, all mineral resources belong to the people of Ghana, rather than the communities in which they are found. But we must also acknowledge that in the specific case of extractive mineral resources in Ghana, the communities in which these resources are found face unique social, economic, and ecological challenges because of these mining activities. In recognition of this unique disadvantage, Ghana currently allocates 10% of mineral revenue to mining communities. The evidence obtained, however, does not show that this has significantly addressed the unique challenges within these mining communities. Our country must not continue to overlook this phenomenon. Therefore, I invite all stakeholders, partners, and citizens to consider thoroughly the recommendations in the MDDS policy brief with a view to taking the necessary steps towards implementation. In this regard, when the speaker from the Office of the Administrator of Stool Land spoke, he did mention that they have already started implementing some of the recommendations in the report. I think we didn't give him a loud applause enough. So I would want us to invite us to give him a loud applause. The reason is that we know that part of our developmental challenges has been that although we carry out a lot of research, sometimes whether or not the recommendations are implemented is another matter. So it is refreshing, and I think we must acknowledge and appreciate the fact that even before the launch of the report, the OASL has already started to implement some of the recommendations. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you to this program. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to an exciting panel discussion, among others, for God and for Ghana. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson Clara Kasati. So it's now time for us to find out, what's in the report, and help me as we welcome Mohammed Awal, who is Research Manager, Team Lead, Social Accountability and SDGs Programming at CDD-Ghana, with a round of applause.
Thank you very much, Winston. Yes. It's been long in coming. 2-3 years, and today we are here. I'm the most happiest person, honestly. Hearing my man from OSL, I remember all of the days, the struggles, getting the data, and all of the evidence that we are going to present today. So thank you very much for your partnership and all of the things that you have started doing with our report. And that's really the essence of the work that we do at CDD. And so, Madam Chair, I would like to stand on the existing protocols, and I think we've spent a lot of time, and then to go to the meat of the matter. Really, we are all here to hear the results. My madam has already given the results out, and so I don't know what else to say. But I'll try my best to sort of say something. Yes. All right. I'm not sure whether you guys can see if you can get the lights a bit down. So a lot has been said about our mining communities and all of the challenges that they face. And so for us, it's really the basis of our motivation for doing what we've done with this report. And so in terms of the outline of my presentation, I'll really go back to present a bit of the context to why we really initiated the Mining District Development Scorecard, and then how we went about constructing the league table itself. And then obviously the results, some has been given already, but I think that the most important thing is about the district and what we found out. And I think the last two things for me to do is the policy recommendations. And then maybe some next steps for us going forward, what we seek to do with the report, with partnership with our government partners, and most importantly, at the district level as well. So we've all have said it. Ghana is the Gold Coast, right? Gold is quite a very significant part of our economy. We've generated enough revenue year on year to support our development process. But most importantly, if you look at a district level, as we heard from OSL, a substantial amount of district budget really comes from mining, mineral royalties that they receive. And we normally say that for mineral-rich district, this is a shot in the arm. Apart from other additional national revenues that they receive, like the Common Fund, the DDF, and all of that, they get these additional resources to support development processes. You would expect that these additional resources with national resources should be able to help to improve development outcomes. But any of us who has visited our mining district will affirm that the development outcomes we see in many of our mining districts is not the best. There's always the case that is being made about Obuasi and Johannesburg, right? Anytime we talk about mining, the comparison is always there. 100 years of mining, you go to Johannesburg, you come to Obuasi, it's worse, right? And I remember my first time visiting Kenyase, where Newmont has its largest concession. And I asked, is this Kenyase, really? No one single tarred road in Kenyase. And that, for me, is symptomatic of how mining hasn't done good to us in many respects. And so there's certainly a conversation around the local resource scarce. That when you go to this district, in the abundance of natural resources and the resources, royalties and revenues that district assemblies and other stakeholders generate, you would find that the development outcomes are not as much as we expect to see. And the challenges really, at the heart of it is really governance, right? How, even however small the resources are, how are we managing these small resources to be able to improve development outcomes? And if you take Gates report that has been doing a lot of the subnational level accounting and reporting around that, there certainly are a number of challenges that are affecting the way we are managing our mineral resources. Part of it is really the question about how much are we receiving and how much are we really, particularly for districts, sharing with the district for them to address their development problems. The other thing has to do with the districts themselves, really. The weak planning processes around these mineral revenues. And then also, we have the challenge of delays. And you would know, anytime you pick some of these transfers and you look at the delays that come about relative to district-owned development agenda, it sort of affects how they get the kinds of better outcomes that they are supposed to be able to get. And most importantly for us is the issue about information. How much do citizens know about these funds? So that at least it will help them to trace and to account for it and to demand some level of accountability. And in many of our districts, Certainly, citizens don't even know how much of the resources that their localities received. We went in there when we were validating the report and speaking to citizens. We asked, do you even know how much you've received this year or even last year? And except for one or two people, majority of the stakeholders who were at the forum said, I don't even know how much I've received. And how so do you expect citizens to be able to engage on the mining issue? And so I'm happy that OSL has admitted that whilst you do all of the publications at the national level, obviously at the district level, there's a lot of information gap. And I think our evidence from our report also shows that. And so it was some of these problems around transparency and accountability that we said, look, is there something that we can do to be able to improve that? And that's what led us to the project that we are about, the report that we are about to launch today. And for us, our goal really is to enhance transparency and accountability and to be able, through that process, to promote better development outcomes in our mining district. And to be able to do that, we came up with what we call the Mining District Scorecard. We took a cue from our long-standing work, as Adam has said, in social accountability. We've done the district league table, Ghana Cities league table, all of that, the learnings that we've acquired from there, and the impact of those kinds of league table, we thought that we need to bring same attention to our mining sector and to see what we can do to sort of incentivize some actions to be able to address the poor development outcomes around mining in our district. The focus that we had, really, is to focus on two institutions. If you look at our legal framework around the transfer of mineral resources, there are two important institutions that receive resources on behalf of communities. One of it is the district assembly, and I think that the OLSF sort of established how much goes to all district assemblies. The other one is a new innovation we've done in our new Mineral Development Fund Act, which is the Mining Communities Development Scheme. That was a very major addition to how we could transfer resources into the district so that we'll be able to do better development at the district level. And for this scheme, in every mining district, we set up the local management committees to manage these funds. It is these two funds that are received by these two agencies that we focused our attention on in terms of the transparency, accountability, and participation processes in the decision-making in terms of the investments that are done. And so if you look at the framework, I wouldn't spend too much time on that because we've spoken about that. The MDDS, the district assemblies, the 10% that OLS receive takes 1% out of it for administrative purposes, the 9% is treated as 100%, and then 55% of it is shared to all mineral resource-rich districts, right? And disbursements are made every quarter. If you look at a certain portion also goes to the MDF, the Mineral Development Fund, and about 4% of that, or 40% of that, is allocated for the Mining Community Development Scheme. And this is where all the LMCs that are established at the local level get their resources to be able to support, in partnership with communities, to do better development outcomes. Now, for us, what we wanted to do is that these monies that go, really, we want to ensure that the information around them is provided to communities. And so through our report, we hope that what we will publish today will sort of set the process for how much money has come into all the districts, so that at least stakeholders are aware. If they need to trace it, if they need to demand accountability, they can be able to do so. Most importantly for us is really to incentivize conversation, right, at the local level. Because once citizens are aware and we all know how much money has come, we can have a better, well-informed dialogue about where we need to invest these resources. But with lack of information, many of the citizens are unable to engage on some of these issues. And so we are hoping that by publishing this report, citizens will get well informed, local stakeholders will get well informed, we'll all come back and have some conversation about what do we do with the little that we've received and which areas we think that we should be able to invest these resources. The other important thing for us is really about policy reform, right? There have been a number of policies, regulations around how we can manage our resources. This for us is almost like an M&E, an evaluation of those legal framework policies that we've set up on how we can manage our mineral royalties. The findings and the recommendations that we made, we believe, can go to support looking back into this policy and to see to what extent we can make some provisions for revisions, strengthening some of the legislative framework to ensure that we get better outcomes for our mining royalties, particularly at the district level. So how did we go about the Mining District Development Scorecard? First of all, we sort of did a number of consultations. to understand the various elements that are important to have a better sense of how districts are managing or how we should better manage our royalties. And I think we came up with about 5 key core components which will be the basis of our own assessment. The first component is really fiscal transparency. What are the disclosure practices, public financial management disclosure practices, information disclosure practices around these resources that comes to this district? The second for us is really the effectiveness of the local governments themselves. Resources go into districts. How effective are they? How capable are they in managing these resources on behalf of the communities and to deliver better developments on them? And then also the local management committees, who are the custodians of the resources that are sent through the mining community development scheme. How effective are they? How are they engaging with the communities? We wanted to also find that out. And then we were thinking also about citizenship, that it's not enough for these institutions to be doing this. How well informed and active are citizens in these communities? Are they engaging on the issues? We wanted to also assess, particularly how they are involved in the decision-making processes by local governments and then the LMCs. And then finally for us, what value are we getting from that? And so we have the Mineral Development Fund utilization efficiency. How efficient are our district assemblies? Are the local management committees spending this money, and what kinds of outcomes are we seeing? To be able to measure that, we came up with about 22 sub-component indicators so that we are able to understand each of these components that we discussed. 10 out of the sub-components really are assessed using citizens' experiential survey. And I think this is the innovation from Gaiety, for instance, in terms of bringing in citizens' feedback into that process. The rest of the 12 sub-component indicators, we assess them using administrative data. And this is where really the challenge is. And I think we learned this from our district league table processes as well. That it's not enough to only focus on the routine administrative processes and accounting of how we are using public resources. You need to get the beneficiary's voice into this process so that you can understand in a very comprehensive way how better we are managing public resources. And so to understand to assess district on each of these 5 components, we develop these specific indicators that allows us to be able to do so and the various data processes. And so if you take fiscal transparency, for example, we were particularly interested in whether citizens are aware of the allocation of these resources. Here, you cannot even get administrative data for that. And so we go there and do a survey and ask citizens whether they know of these resources. Also, whether they are aware about information dissemination platforms, where they can go, whether it's at assembly or their community information center, to be able to get information for that. We also asked whether assemblies are preparing financial report and publishing those financial reports. There are public financial management regulation responsibilities on the part of assemblies to be able to publish any public funds that they use so that at least citizens will get to know what they are doing with those resources. We also ask about their planning processes, whether those plans that are being done in the name of the community are actually published and citizens can have access to them. And then also whether there's been some adverse findings by the Auditor General and then the Assembly has taken the opportunity to actually share those findings with the communities and also the General Assembly as a whole. So for fiscal transparency, those were the indicators that we thought would be very useful to give us a sense of the extent to which there is some kind of information disclosure by assemblies and other stakeholders on the MDF royalties that goes to the district. Then on local government effectiveness, we're really interested in the regularity with which local assemblies organize meetings. Because in planning for these resources, you are required by NDPC regulations to organize meetings with the communities to decide both the budget and the specific programs and interventions that this money should be spent to. So we wanted to know whether they are very efficient in organizing those kinds of meetings. We are also interested whether their budget and plans have been approved for expenditure, and if so, to what extent. And then also, there's a requirement on local assemblies to do local economic development. Are there elements in their plan that takes care of local economic development? It's important. So that at least for mining, once we are exhausting mining, what other diversified activities can we do in our communities to be able to develop? There is also the question about how are they able to implement the plans? Have they implemented all of their plans? To what extent? What is the percentage of implementation of their plans? So that we know how capable these districts are. The other indicator for us that is very important is the idea that these resources are exhaustible. And so we're interested in trying to find out that in the absence of mining resources, how are local assemblies, for example, generating local resources? And so we wanted to see the ratio of IGF generation with MDF, so that we know that in the future, if there's no mining in Obuasi or Takwa, the assembly on its own can be able to generate local resources to be able to do development work. That goes to the heart of any government, that your ability to extract resources from society and to invest back into society really goes to the heart of the effectiveness of any government. And we're trying to also measure that to see whether our districts are doing well in respect of that. And then for LMCs, the LMCs are just a new creation, right? They came about from the 2016 law. And so we assume that between 2016 to 2020, there was a process to set them up. And by 2020, many of them were set up. To what extent are communities aware about the establishment of the LMCs and the projects that they undertake? What kinds of engagement are LMCs doing with communities, for example? And then also in terms of submission, compliance with administrative processes. The LMCs are set up by the MDF Secretariat. There are a number of compliance rules that they are expected to do. They are reporting, they are budgeting, they are planning processes. We wanted to see how well they are doing it. And all of that goes to the heart of their effectiveness. Are they effective as local institutions to be able to drive development outcome? And then here again, as I said, for citizens, we're interested in how they engage, particularly in the planning processes. And I think that Afrobarometer, anytime I look at Afrobarometer data, sometimes I get worried. That you ask citizens, are you engaging, are you attending assembly meetings? We don't. And so we wanted to go to the heart of civic attitudes in these mining communities to see whether citizens are actually active and they are engaging with the assemblies, particularly in the development planning processes, in the budgeting processes, but most importantly for us, they include the participation of vulnerable groups, women, PWDs, and all of that. We wanted to assess that. And then also whether the district themselves, because it's one thing for us wanting to engage, are the assemblies themselves organizing forums that allows citizens to be able to engage. And for all of that, we draw the data either from our survey or some district progress administrative reports that suggest to us what they've been able to do on that. And then we come to our final component. Here is where the meat of the matter is, really. Where are they investing this money into, and with what efficiency? And here we try to ask whether citizens are aware of any projects that are funded from their mineral royalties. And also what percentage of the expenditure is really spent on economic infrastructure and livelihood issues. Getty has reported a lot of the time where some of this expenditure goes to. We also wanted to go confirm, particularly from citizens, and also using their administrative data to be able to confirm that. And also whether citizens think that the projects are relevant and they are satisfied with where the assemblies and the LMCs are investing this money into. And so all in all, these are the various components that form the basis of our league table under the MDDS. Now, how did we select the district? From our deck study, we recognized that there were about 21 mineral resource-rich districts in Ghana. And because this was a pilot, it was a very innovative idea. We didn't want to overstretch ourselves. We said, look, let's start a pilot and test the ideas that we have and see whether this would work. And so we selected out of these 21 mineral resource districts, 8 districts to go in there and pilot this. And as our friend from the ministry noted, they are the gang of 8, really. If you look at these 8 districts we've selected, they are at the heart of all of the resources that we have. And the 8 districts are spread across 6 regions, Western North, Eastern region, Ashanti, Ahafo, and Central region. You would find Takwa, Prestia, Wassa, East, all of it in Western region. Western North, we have Bibiani and we also Bekwai. And then in Eastern region, we have Brim North. Ashanti region, we have Obuasi. And Ahafo, we have Asutifi North. And then Central region, Upper Denkyira West district. These are really the districts where we went in there to pilot this assessment. And we selected this district for these various reasons. One is the volume. And really, if you look at all of our mining operations, our mining resources, they are really based across these 8 districts. The other one is that we wanted to also understand socioeconomic development outlook on those districts. And we resorted to looking at the district poverty assessment that is done by the GSS, also the Ghana Living Standard Survey, our own league table, to really understand development outcomes in those districts. And also for us, because we are interested in social accountability, we were also considering the fact that we wanted to find districts where there are civic groups and associations that we can partner, we can work with to disseminate the report and use it for advocacy purposes. So these are the 3 criteria that informed our selection of the 8 districts that we selected. Now, how did we collect our experiential data? And that really, for me, is what is also very important. We conducted our surveys in 5 selected communities in each of these districts. For the district we sampled, we wanted it to be very representative. And so the 5 communities in each district were selected based on the fact that we wanted a community that is very close, very near to the mines, so that at least their views are very represented in that. In many mining communities, mining districts, some communities have been resettled. And so we wanted to also understand from their perspective how their resettlement and all of the things that is promised to them and how they view how mining has been, whether a blessing or a curse to them. And then also we wanted a non-mining community in the district. These criteria were informed by a number of things, right? You go and you speak to district assemblies and they say, oh, we consider the entire district or municipality as a mining catchment area. So that's where we want to invest our money. But the law says that invest it in mining catchment areas, right? But because assemblies are investing beyond that, that means we should include communities that are not immediate mining catching areas. So that's why we included all of it, so that we can get a representative sample that sort of gives us the dynamic in the community. We conducted a total of 256 interviews, an average of 32 interviews per district. And here is important. The kinds of respondents we speak to were quite very, very purposive and selective. We wanted to speak to respondents who, one way or the other, are either involved in the process of decision-making around these mineral royalties, or they have information. We didn't just go to the district and walk in there and ask anybody. So they say, maybe if I ask somebody who didn't have an information. The respondent we selected to speak to are people we think are at the decision-making point, and they have some information. So when we look at our respondent include assembly members, unit committees. I'm sure, when you want to talk about royalties, at least it's discussed at assembly. And so an assembly member will know how much royalty has come to them. If he's in a catchment area, he will have some information about it, he and his unit committee and the area council. Traditional authority, nothing is done in our communities without traditional authority. No any projects is commissioned or even started without the representation of traditional authority. And so we thought that there would be quite very good informant around that. We also looked at representatives of PWDs, women groups, youth groups, media and civil society that we actually spoke to. And the information we got supported us to be able to answer some of the questions that we were interested in. In terms of the administrative data sources, they are quite very clear for us. The district annual progress report, anything you want to know about a district, where they've invested any money and all of that, just pick their progress report and you'll be able to know what progress they've done and where the investment and all of that are. Of course, Gatey has been doing sub-national level reporting, and I might say Gatey report was quite very, very useful for us in validating and confirming some of the payments that the assemblies and other entities received from the central level government entities to the local level. And then also the DPAT. Obviously, the DPAT was also quite very useful on a number of indicators that we use. And then the MDF annual progress reports. Obviously, because they set up the LMCs, all of the assessment we got from the LMCs were really from those reports. Now, how did we compute the results? So what we did was really to just normalize the data and ensure that it's from 0 to 100, because some of them is a score of either you have it or you don't have it, and we sort of apply a mathematical process to sort of normalize it. And then for the various subcomponent scores, each of the scores were really averaged, and then we have the main component score for it, and then the mean of the main component score is really what gave us the specific district report scores, each district scores, and then how we then rank all of that. I think in the report we have a very expanded write-up on the methodology, and so many of you who are interested would confront it. And it's a methodology that is work in progress. It was quite a very difficult process to go through. And so we expect your own feedback, either here or after you've read our report, so that we can refine this process going forward. Now, we classified our scores in various forms. Our scores were on the scale of 0 to 100. And so the scores less than 30 correspond to poor performance. And so if a district or a subcomponent score is less than 30, we classify that as to be poor. If it is between 30 to 44, we classify that to be very weak. And then from 45 to 53 as satisfactory, 60 to 74 as good, and then from 75 thereabout, very good. I think that we draw a lot of inspiration from NRGI kinds of classifications and scores and all of that. And now to the big issue, where who has done what, who has performed well, and then as a nation, how best are we managing royalties at the subnational level. We first started to establish for our baseline year, which is 2020, whether the monies have gone. Because you cannot do this assessment when the monies haven't come. And so our first finding is to establish whether the monies have gone to these two entities that we are interested in trying to assess their performance. And truly, the money has gone. If you look at our 8 districts, the total amount that has gone to them in the year 2020 is a little bit closer to 20.5 million Ghana cedi. That is the money that has been sent to this district for development purpose, to district assemblies. And you can see the various receipts by the 8 districts that we have. A very interesting finding is that for some of the districts, the amount that is due them and what they ended up receiving, there are some discrepancies. And that's where the problem is. And the districts have been complaining a lot about that. That you plan with an expected amount, then in the end, you get less. For some districts, what they planned, they got more. So that's one very interesting observation we made from that. And then the LMCs. In the year 2020, all of them have received their money. And this is how much each one of them have received. In total, we have close to about 5.4 million Ghana cedi that has gone to the LMCs as part of the share of the Mining Community Development Scheme resource transfer that is supposed to go to the districts. Now, which districts have done well? As Dr. Adams said, Brim North. Brim North was the top performer in terms of our first maiden league table, and they scored 42.4% out of 100. And so that's what Brim North has scored. That is followed by Takwa in Soem, that came second with 41.9%, and then Wasa East third with 41%, and then my big disappointment, my big municipalities, Obuasi and Prestia. This is at the heart of where we do our mining. Their performance is not looking quite very good. So Obuasi placed 6th, Prestia placed last, Esutifi 7th. Really, that is where we are. The national average is 38.4%. Which is really very, very weak if you look at our classification. And so in terms of how we are managing these mineral royalties at the subnational level, we are not doing very well at all. And it's no surprising that you go into this mineral district and you see the kinds of confrontations, the challenges, and the poor development outcomes. It's really quite not good at all, and we need to do something about that. Yes. So looking at the report, we made 3 observations. First is to look at what is really driving district performance. We found out from our analysis that district performance were driven really by 3 of our components: fiscal transparency, citizens' participation, and local government effectiveness. And so the performance of each of the districts were really here. This is where they tried to make progress. But very interestingly, they made progress on different scales. If you look at the administrative data that were used to score some of the indicators, almost all of the districts have done well, right? 100%. There are no variation in some of their scores. And that is one of the problems we've had with our routine administrative data processes. Any assessment you want to do and you use administrative data, there are very little variations in those data. And so for all of the indicators under these three components, almost all the districts score 100%. It means that they are doing well. But when you go into those districts, you really don't see that. When we go ahead to speak to our citizens and to ask them who are the beneficiaries of the actions of this district, that is where you see the true picture as well. Here, on average, you see citizens scoring the assemblies quite very poor on a number of indicators under fiscal transparency. For example, whether citizens are aware of MDF allocations. It's only a few who said they are quite aware about the allocations that comes into their district. And that's where the problem is. How assemblies are really sharing this information with citizens. If you also ask them whether there are platforms for them to engage, a lot of the citizens are saying no. So on average, you look at it, it's only about 24%, 24 points that assemblies are scoring from citizens' perspective relative to fiscal transparency. You look again on local government effectiveness, where we ask them whether assemblies are regularly organizing meetings for them to engage and to get information around there. The average score over there too is not good, just 17.7% out of a 100-point score. And that for us is quite very worrying. It means that either they are active and they want to engage and the assemblies are not regularly organizing that. And anybody who has worked in the assemblies would know that assemblies say it's quite very expensive to do these kinds of community engagement, and they rarely do some of this engagement. So we're not very surprised about that feedback from our communities. You look also on citizens' participation and all of that, and you ask whether they are also participating. They admit that, in fact, citizens are also not engaging in instances where opportunities are created for them to engage. And the average score we have there is just 17.2%, which is quite very, very poor. And so whilst the assemblies are not doing well, the citizens themselves also are not doing well. And so we have a double trouble in our district. So the other observation we've made really is what components are really driving low district scores. And here, surprisingly enough, the local management committees. The performance of local management committees in all of these districts doesn't look good. And it's really one component that is driving the scores down. And then also the utilization efficiency of the MDF funds that goes there. If you look at the overall, the district performance on LMC effectiveness is just 14.5 points out of 100 points. It means that the performance of all of the LMCs in this district is quite very poor. The LMCs are not doing quite very, very well. And if you compare the average performance on LMCs with overall national performance, there is almost about 30% gap in terms of that, which is not very, very good at all. And the specific areas where LMC performance is not good, really, is around whether they are preparing their progress report and submitting those annual reports to MDF Secretariat. None of them in the year 2020 did so. And we were surprised when we got the letter from the MDF Secretariat itself to say, we are not getting any report from our LMCs. But monies have been sent to them, but reports are really not coming. And so when you go in there, tell them to be able to do their report and send that to us. You'll see also in terms of LMC's engagement, citizens' awareness of LMC established and projects implemented, it's quite very bad. The number of citizens who said they are quite aware about the projects that are funded through LMC is also not looking good. And how they are engaging citizens is also not looking very good. And you see quite very poor performance in Prestia, Honi Valley, Esuitifi North, and Obuasi Municipal, where the LMCs in those districts and municipalities are not doing very well. Then on MDF utilization again, over here too as well, the overall district performance score is really 26.9%. And this is against the 38.4% of the national score. And it's about close to 12%. Right? And here too, we are not doing well in terms of the efficiency in the way we are utilizing this resource. And the specific indicators that sort of brought these scores low are really awareness. And so a lot of citizens are not even aware about projects that are funded through the mineral royalties by district assemblies. And then also whether they think that the projects are relevant. And the scores don't look good at all. Again, whether they think that the LMC's project themselves are also very relevant. And across all of that, citizens are saying that many of the projects and the investment that they are doing do not speak to their community needs. And the poor performing district on average on the MDF utilization, really, again, Obuasi Municipal, Upper Denchira West, and Bibiani and Miasu Municipal. These are really the districts that when you look at the efficiency with which they are utilizing their MDF resources, they are not doing very well. Our last observation we've made is really about rural district and urban district, urban municipalities. And we found out that rural mineral resource district outperformed their urban mineral resource districts. It's quite a very interesting finding for us that we want to understand what explains that. Because if you look at the league table, on average, rural district performs slightly better. They score 39.4% as against 37.4% by urban municipalities. And then if you look at on the league table itself, 3 out of the 4 top-ranked districts on the MDDS league table are all of them rural districts. So Brim North, Wasa East, and Upper Denchira West. And the bottom half are really where you find our urban municipalities. So Prestia and Obuasi are really not doing quite very well. And so it will be very interesting to understand why rural districts are doing well, better than our urban district. You will also find that on the 5 components level, rural districts have performed better in 4 out of the 5. And so if you look at fiscal transparency, on average, districts scored 58.5%, and then municipalities score 50.3% fiscal transparency on average. If you look at local management committee effectiveness as well, districts also outperformed our urban municipalities. If you look at citizens' participation and engagement, same district performed better than our municipalities. And then the mineral development fund utilization efficiency, again, our rural districts are doing well. It is only in local government effectiveness that we find our urban municipalities doing quite better than our rural municipalities. So now, what are our recommendations based on what we have found out? One, overall, the 38.4% doesn't look good. So we are not even at the 50th mark as a country. We obviously have to do something about it. And I think that from what I've said, there is a question about we need to strengthen institutional accountability and responsiveness. There is also the question about whether the royalties that go there are sufficient enough to be able to address development outcomes. And then also, importantly, activating active citizenship. We need to get our citizens to engage in this in a very informed way. But we make very specific recommendations. First of all, my boss, I haven't heard anybody talk about the increment. 10% is not sufficient enough. We all know the kinds of challenges that our district face is not sufficient enough overall. Both the ones that goes to the district assemblies and then the local management committees, it's not sufficient enough to be able to address that. Beyond the increment, there's also the question about delay, right? The money stay, it gets from you at Accra, goes to the regions before it gets to the district. And before it comes, knowing what we know of our inflations and the cost, plans that assemblies have done, really they are unable to do so. And so our first call is really that we have to look at the distribution framework again. We don't believe that a lot of the money that stays at the center and other agencies is good enough. I think that it must go to the real communities so that at least the communities can be able to address that. And in our focus group discussions, it came up so many times that these monies are not enough. You give an LMC 500,000. What really can they do with 500,000? Really, in a year, what really can they, where can they invest 500,000? Maybe a small toilet facility, maybe a kiosk here and there. No wonder their impact is not being felt. And so we are urging that we should, as a nation, we should look at it again and see how much we can be able to increase. Then really publishing the information. And I think when we had the engagement with you guys, and I'm happy that you are doing something about it, not only in the national dailies, at the district level, we have to get the districts to publish this information. The information has to go to the citizens, and they have to use that to be able to engage at the community level. I got a shock of my life when LMC said they only have 2% for administrative and for outreach. How can they, out of 500,000, just 2% for city allowances and for outreach? It's really problematic. And so they cannot be able to do that. We have to invest in how we publish this information so that citizens are informed and they are able to engage in an informed way. You see in the mining communities where citizens are just fighting here and there, it's because they lack information. We believe that if we publish how much assemblies are supposed to receive and how much they've actually received and what they've spent, it's quite very important around that. Then obviously, I'm happy to talk about the guidelines, right? NRGI, GATE, we've talked about. Maybe we should find an act like we did in the oil and gas, the petroleum management. We should do something with the mining, right? There's no currently an act that looks at how we manage our royalties. We have to do something about it. And I'm happy that we would have conversations on the guidelines on how where districts should spend, so that citizens can be able to hold them accountable. It was difficult for us to make our own judgment about what expenditure constitutes a good expenditure that affects socioeconomic development, and what priorities this way, and what percentages. We have to use our own discretion and other global standards to be able to measure the expenditure. So if we have a guideline that says to assemblies where they should spend this money, where they should invest this, will be most very helpful. Fine. The other recommendation we are making is that assemblies and LMCs need to actively engage with citizens. I think the town hall meetings are important. We need to plan with these resources. We need to have conversations with our communities about this so that they gain an understanding, so that their priorities are actually informing the decisions and the allocations decisions that are made. We believe that that kind of dialogue and engagement with the community has the potential to improve both their participation, but also their demand for accountability and where the resources should be invested and the outcomes that they get. So, everyone, help me out. Okay. Yes. One of the things that is important, is dear to my heart, is social accountability. We really have to invest in how we get communities to be active. We have to activate citizenship. And I think that we can do that by supporting civil society organizations, community-based civil groups, and even with local government to sort of come up as a multi-actor group to initiate campaigns that will create awareness for citizens about what their roles are. What is the role of the LMC? What is the role of the assembly? What are the accountability structures? If you have a problem as a community, this is the way you can address it. It is not good to go on the street to do that. It should be the last resort. We need to invest in those kinds of information, knowledge, empowerment for communities. And also to focus on how, for example, they can use something like the MDDS league table to be able to demand accountability. We also think that now we are doing OGP, Open Governance Partnership. The ministry, OLS, we should support the district to be able to inculcate those principles in their planning and governance processes. It's important that if we do that, we can be able to incentivize communities and collaborative engagement to be able to address the challenges that citizens face. Now my big problem. The MDF has to look at the composition of the local management committees. Really. The way they are composed, they are not fit for purpose. Right? We've had some members of the committee that says that we are not engaging because if you go, they almost look like a political party campaign. Because from the membership are all political party people. And so the mining companies are not engaging because they don't want to be tagged politically. There are also conversations about, so how do you make an LMC chair a chief? And you expect us to, as members, to demand accountability from a chief. Right? And so, and how also do you sit in Accra and nominate people without the consent of the communities, really? And so it's important that we look at the way the LMCs are composed so that they are relevant, so that they're able to engage with the communities. And they need to also intensify. The 2% for administrative and for outreach is not sufficient enough. And I'm sure many of them are here. I want them to tell you, to tell all of us, and the nation how the 2% is not sufficient enough. Because they've complained to me and said, when you go to MDF Secretariat, tell them that the 2% is not enough. I hope I've delivered many of you your message. The 2% is not enough. Now, what have we learned? Really, for us, as you all noted, it's a pilot. And I think that it's a very useful tool that if we refine it and we get it good at it, I think it can contribute to our information basis that can support evidence to support the work, for example, that Gaiety is doing. Gaiety does a lot more administrative data collection and assessment, and I think that what we do through them is to complement that with citizens' opinion around all of this decision-making process and how those processes are serving the communities better. And so we think that if we get better at it and we reform it, we'll get a very useful tool that can contribute to our own monitoring and evaluation of our policies and programs and legislations around mineral royalty utilization. It provides a snapshot, and today this is just the pilot report. We are hoping that we will do another one and we'll be able to monitor progress that districts are making so that at least we can see what progress has been done and what we need to do to improve that. In the future, we hope to add all the 21. So we'll bring all the 21 districts in the league table and be able to have a much more broader and comprehensive information that can facilitate public debate and conversation around how best we can manage our royalties for better development outcomes. We will be partnering with our partners in the district to be able to undertake a number of actions that would get districts to learn from how best they are doing that. And one of the things we're thinking about, okay, Takwa came second, and Prestia is last. I was telling them, if I'm angry, I can walk from Takwa to Prestia. Like, so what explains Takwa being first and then Prestia being last? There's some lessons to learn. And so we'll convene those kinds of cross-district learning to facilitate good practices and then using that to be able to improve at a district level the way we manage our royalties. Thank you very much.
Let's give him another round of applause. Thank you very much, Awal Mohammed and team. You've done a very good job. I'm also concerned, you talked about your major concern, the composition of the LMCs. And it happens to be my major concern also. You talked about chiefs, demanding accountability from chiefs. Because, when chiefs speak, it's the end. And our people say, you don't advise a chief publicly. So if you can't advise him publicly, how can you even demand accountability from him? But also, you asked the other question. As custodians of the land, must they not have a say? Maybe they can help in sending a representative, but that would lead us to even the whole composition and the whole system of our decentralized processes, how we go about it. So I'm happy you've brought this up. You've talked about, how come Takwa is second and Prestia Huni Valley is last. When we started our decentralization, we said that it was going to lead to a competition amongst the various districts. I'm happy you are publishing this, because once those in Prestia recognize that they're not doing something right, they will demand accountability. Once again, thank you very, very much for the good work that you've done. Which means we can now launch it. So let's welcome the chairperson, Clara Kasati, to officially launch the report.
Thank you very much. Please, can I have a copy of the report? Thank you very much. Nananom Nime Name, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen. As the speeches have shown already today, today marks a significant milestone in strengthening transparency and accountability in mineral revenue utilization for socio-economic development in Ghana's mining districts. It is therefore with great pleasure and honor that I stand before you today to declare the Mining Districts Development Scorecard, the MDDS report, officially launched. The MDDS will provide us a comprehensive overview of the quality of institutional and governance practices in managing and utilizing mineral resource revenues at the district level. May we stay committed and passionate about inclusive development and using the recommendations in this report to enhance developmental outcomes for mining communities. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of CDD-Ghana, its partners and stakeholders, I hereby declare the MDDS mini report officially launched.
Thank you very much, Clara Cassati. And so I'm sure we'll all have copies and begin to review it. The most important thing is that certain things must change. And I'm happy that some things have started changing already. We hope that all the recommendations are implemented. I don't see how 10%, no, anyway. When we get back to the panel discussion, we'll address all of those issues and concerns. But it's some 45 minutes after 11. It means we can take a 15-minute coffee break, return, and continue with the program. Please, 15 minutes is what I said. So let's have a 15 minutes coffee break. Then we can return and have a conversation. Thank you very, very much. You just go through the door on my left, and then we can have our coffee break, and then come back and start the panel conversation where we can, have a discussion on all the findings and recommendations. Thank you. So we can go and have the coffee break now, and in 15 minutes' time, we come back and continue. resource and environmental governance. He's done extensive work on local management committees. Let's welcome Kwabena Echampong Boache. Our next panelist is the Abakomahene of Sefrianyaso traditional area and chief of Sefrin Takam. He is a member of the Western North Regional House of Chiefs, a board member of the Coastal Development Authority, chairman of Local Management Committee of MDF, of the Bebiani Ariaso Bekwai Municipal Assembly. Let's welcome Nana Kwejo Somia II. Our next panelist is the District Coordinating Director for Wasa East District Assembly. He's a budget analyst by profession and has worked in the District Assembly for over 24 years. Let's welcome Evans Mark Ando. Thank you very much, Evans. Last but not least is the advisor on mines at the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, Benjamin Ai. So thank you, all of you, for making time to join us this afternoon. And because we have one microphone, we'll start off like this. Pardon us. I'm told that there are two programs being organized at the same time, so we may have to do with one microphone. Okay. So let me just start off with you, Auntie Hannah, as I have called you in the past. And there's a question to all of you. Okay. The good thing is that I may have engaged with some of you before. I see Mark, years ago we did a program on accountability at the district assembly level. Yes. So what are your initial reactions? You've had the report, you've had, the findings, how there isn't much accountability. If the highest scoring district gets 42%, and if the average is 38.4%, certainly that is not the best. What would be your reactions to the report? Let me start with you, Auntie Hannah, then you pass the microphone. The microphone is over there. Yes.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to share my thoughts. I think I'll commend CDD for coming out with this scorecard, and also to encourage a lot of the NGOs, I wouldn't say civil society groups, to veer into the mining sector, because there are a lot of issues, and the outcomes of the results is not surprising to me at all. In fact, if I remember very well, when the EPA did the Akubin ranking some years ago, the results were very similar to what we are experiencing now. And for the report, some thoughts on the report, that the mining districts are realizing about 40 to 60% revenue from mining. And then why the local management committees were not functional and things like that. I'll give in-depth comments later. But then it's tied with the law, the composition of the local management committees, the objects, and then what they are supposed to be delivering. And if you look at the EITI reports, and you see the utilization of the funds, you will not be surprised. I did some simple calculation. And Prestia, which happens to be my district, because I come from the Prestia Huni Valley municipality, got 1 million, and then I just opposed that to the population and worked out the per capita is 4 cities, 24 pesos. I did that for Takwa. It was 6 cities, 40 pesos. I did that for Boise. It was 2 cities, 40 pesos. So definitely, the results is not surprising for me. I'll pause here for further comments.
Great, so let's just pass it on. Yes, get your thoughts also on the report.
Yeah, thank you very much. And as I did indicate when I was giving my opening remarks, this report is a very good tool. And for us land administrators and people who disperse to land revenue it is something that will engender conversation into the usage of mineral royalties and other resources at the local level. The scoring, for me, it was a little bit surprising, even though it's just a reflection of what actually happens. But I'm of the view that if some other questions were added, maybe it would have brought out other things. For instance, you know, the report talks about the MDF funds, the MDF funds. But for us, we see them as stool land revenue. Stool land revenue was there long before the MDF came on board. You know, stool lands revenue is in the Constitution, 1992 Constitution. In fact, we started distributing stool land revenue as a nation from 1962, including mineral royalty. But there was no framework for ensuring that these monies are distributed on time, because at the time, as and when government feels like releasing some of the monies, you know, so the MDF came to put in the structures. And the MDF coming on board is very good, and it is helping in the prompt release of funds or, you know, the regularity of the releases is now okay. But then if you ask somebody at the district that have you received maybe MDF funds, the person may not know that it's part of stool land revenue, you know, but that is not to say that the report is not good. It's very good. And for us, we've taken it as a tool.
But if you listen to Mohammed Awal, he makes the point that the persons selected were people with knowledge of these things. And so it's just not going to people within the district, but speaking to people with knowledge, okay? So the MDF fund that you talk about, you know, and its disbursement to the LMCs and all, these are things that the people are aware of. And so it is expected that these people would be able to answer these questions. Beyond that, you've talked about certain questions. Because since we're all learning, what other questions would you have wanted to ask so that we can write it down and then in subsequent reports they are factored?
Okay, thank you very much. You know, like I was saying that when we say stool land revenue, it's a mixture of a lot of revenue sources. We have the mineral royalty, we have concession rents, we have timber royalties. In the district, some of these monies are boxed together at one point in time. So they might be doing some form of development with a mixture of some of this revenue. For EITI, you know, guidelines, we try to segregate some of these revenues to be able to know how much mineral royalty was received, how much timber royalty was received. But for questions, direct questions aimed at elucidating certain understanding and outcomes, what I'm saying is that if you are also not very careful, so you could ask, oh, do you know about MDF? Has the funds been, oh, we don't know. Have you heard of stool land revenue? Is it being used efficiently and all that? But this is the beginning of a process which is very commendable, and I congratulate them. But I will wish every year it comes out for us to start working with it and for us to fine-tune it to be able to get the right responses.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let's get to Mr. Boache.
Thank you very much, host. The report, I've taken my time to read it, and it's very excellent work. And I'm very happy that it seeks to basically pursue the path of institutional policy and legal reforms for the mineral sector, because there's abundant evidence with us that the mineral sector is not effective as it is in terms of the utilization of royalties, as we're talking about the South Africa-Ghana experience. So we believe that it is a starter, it is kickstarting a dialogue to drive the process between the institutions, the civil society, and especially having the local government as the hub around which we have to work together and all the other relevant institutions. And on the components, for the studies, the fiscal transparency, the local government effectiveness, and the citizen participation active engagement, which scored above the 38.4, is very well in line with what is happening in practice. Because we talked about decentralization years ago in the 80s when I was in secondary school, secondary school, years way back. So I'm not surprised about the high scoring. We have moved a long way in the part of decentralization, though there are still challenges. And then when you pick the local management efficiency, local LMC effectiveness, and the MDF utilization efficiency, there too is scored very low, but there are some underlying reasons why it did that, though wholly, as the previous speaker was saying, it should have come up with other key underlying drivers as to why this scoring were very low. Another session I'll come up as to the indicators for the subcomponents. 3 of them were skewed towards CDD. I saw one for the LMCs, and then the MDF. That one, I think I'll be helped to address that question to understand it clearly. And again, in talking holistically about the LMC, in 2000, the MDF Act, as it came out in 2016, by 2020, we then set up about 23 LMCs in Ghana, 19 or so. I understand they are now 23. They were given proper build-up and then capacity building. And the LMC's guidelines, I want to put it on record, were set up, or they were situated within the MDF Act. The establishment of the Mining Community Development Scheme, as provided by Section 16, then triggered the establishment of the LMCs by Provision 19. And the composition talks about the DCE, the traditional authorities, the Secretary of the Minerals Commission being the Secretary, Women's Youth Representative, and having representation from the mining communities, mining companies. And the reason why we found it necessary to have the chiefs, I'm not trying to say that the positive trajectory for the modifications, is that we believe that once the DC is there, the traditional authorities are there, and they are supposed to situate whatever iterative project proposals that they push towards to the MDF. Initially, they might start with 5, if I end up upon 1 based upon priority setting. The DC being there, situating the work within the district development plans, priority to the district, the chiefs being there, and all the other relevant people. In as much as the chiefs cannot be held accountable, or we cannot question them in public, we believe that for the common good of project development, 5 priority projects, scaling it down based upon anticipated revenue flows, based upon projections from the 20% due, the MDF from the GRA receipts of leaseholders, you will then be able to select projects that they can find within the time frame. So there are reasons, and I think that this particular work is very, very, very good. We are going to work with you, with CDD leading the process, to see how best we can evolve to make a functional MDF LMCs. And lastly, but not the point, I believe that the engagement of the local government, in this in this setup of the usage of mineral royalties is very, very important. We have had the chance of developing guidelines for use of timber royalties for the local government. It was a whole work undertaken by Civic Response with funding from the European Union. But because these are project funded arrangements, when they end, it ends up over there. So it is high time that since CDD has taken the steps with this excellent report, which I'll mark it about 80%, the drive is being very good. We will have to lead the process. You all have to come on board and support you so that we move towards a very vibrant use of our royalties from the mining sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go to Nana.
Thank you very much. To me, I would thank the CDD team for the work that they have done. In fact, it's very good. The percentage, the individual percentage is not good, and the overall is not good. But I would say it's just a starter. If you look at LMC, we started only a few years ago, I think 2018. So it's not bad, that's to me. The main problem is the 2%. See, if you want to do a lot of community engagement, you have to go to the community, and all these, they need funds. And meanwhile, you don't have much over there. So that is the main problem, that the public or the community is not aware. Then if you come to Babieni, we have a problem over there. One of the mining community is not in our list. Ashanti Gold, that's Babieni. If you look at your list over here, we have GBC and Chirano. That you have reported it when you went to Obuasi, we did it. Still, it's not on the list. So it's also a problem we are facing. But in all, I would say it's just a beginning. So your report will give us on track, so that at least now we know that these are the modalities or the components. We are going to work towards that, so that in the next meeting, then we will be, or the overall will be good. So that is my suggestion.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Before I go to the substantive issue, what Mr. Atta was mentioning about the fact that we have different aspects of the stool lands revenue. When you come to the district level, as far as the community members are concerned, they call it royalties. And they put all of them together. So when you mention mineral royalties, to them it's royalties. If it's timber, it's royalties. If it's rent, it's royalties. So that is how they understand it. But I believe this service is bringing those issues out. And so as we educate the community members, they will see the difference, which one is coming from the minerals, which one is coming from the timber. But for the issue at stake, I think the report, I'm not surprised, I was not surprised about the marks that we had. If you take the district assemblies, as far as our act is concerned, the Local Governance Act, citizen participation is actually a key aspect of the work that we are supposed to do. But in identifying needs, in budgeting, in executing projects, our citizen participation is generalized. We have not gotten to levels where we isolate only mining communities and say, let's concentrate on mining communities, look at how much is coming there, and then let's plan towards them. They are the most hostile communities in the district. So security issues, you have to concentrate there. Almost every time, roads are blocked because mining companies, mining communities feel that resources are being taken from their communities. They are bearing the brunt of all the negative effects of mining in their communities. And so they expect that almost everything should come to them.
Wouldn't you agree?
That is perfectly true.
Yes, that as a community where the mining is, where they feel the effect the most,
sure,
there should be priority,
sure,
when it comes to the usage of funds.
Yeah, so that is why I'm saying that in our citizen engagement this time, we should not just lump them as part of, we are going to prepare a medium-term development plan, so we are going to area councils and engage them and take their inputs. But this time, even after that, we isolate them and do proper needs identification based on whatever we are expecting as far as their MDF or royalties is concerned. And I also feel that this is opening our eyes to the need for capacity building at that level. There are a lot of things that community members are not. Even the assembly members that were involved in this survey, some of the things that came up are things that they are not really aware of. So now it has put a lot of pressure on us. After this survey, now the people have started coming out to us. Oh, Director, so last year, this is how much you got, and we didn't do this, we didn't do this. But that also has its own issues about it.
And talking about that one having its own issues, for instance, I heard Mohammed Awal make the point that when it comes to, the disbursement of fund, catchment area, the district always interprets that to mean, the whole district. But they would want to see more funds go to the communities where the companies operate. Is that something for you as district coordinating director? Is that something you would want to see implemented, starting off with your district, because you're here?
Sure, it is something that we have really taken up. But if you even take the whole nation, the country as a whole, whatever revenues, if you look at the breakdowns, about 80% of the funds go to the consolidated fund.
Yeah.
And that one goes for the whole country. And so if the share that has to come to the district assembly also gets there, you should also know, I mentioned the issue about security at those levels. If I'm supposed to organize dissect meeting about a blockade of road in a mining community, I have to fund it. If I don't have the resources, I may have to fall on MDF to do that.
Before
and
I
so
get to,
I see it as covering the whole district. But I understand and appreciate the fact that we should be looking at zeroing in on the communities.
Before I get to Mr. Ayi, because I come from a mining area, I come from Mpoho.
Sure.
I know the destruction the people face in these areas. So it is important, for instance, for all of these things and for the destruction in these areas to be repaired through the very funds that accrue from the activities of these companies. But you hold on 1 minute. I'll get back to you on that. Auntie Hannah would also have a say on that, and Nana would have a say on that. But let me get the view of Mr. Ayi.
Okay, thank you so much. I think we need to commend CDD for the good work that has been done to start with. And to say that, am I surprised? Not really. Looking at it from the two perspectives, from government perspective and also from EITI perspective, because I've been quite involved in that. But OASL hit the nail on the head, sort of, in this matter of lack of awareness as to what is being done from mining revenues. There's this confusion about, is it land revenue, is it mineral revenue, whatever. And that's something we need to clear up as well. I guess it's a lack of clarity as far as policy is concerned. And if we did, it will help a lot in local sensitization of what is happening. But then from the point of view of government, let me say that government has the intent of ensuring that through transparency and accountability, local governance would achieve development. Indeed, that's how come part of the royalties were sent to the local community, apart from what mines are supposed to do. For instance, they being responsible for dealing with the environmental impacts and all that. That aside, mineral royalties through the MDF were meant to promote development. So that was the intent as far back as '93. Even before it became a legal requirement. It was administratively put in place, etc. But then clearly from the results, and again, EITI has confirmed that so many times, that is not the reality on the ground. Again, from the question then is why? A lot will be around the definition of what is a mining community. Because if you look at the law, the Minerals Development Fund law, it focuses on the mining community. Really, what is mining community? The assemblies will define it as their catchment area, but it's debatable, and we'll need to get into that a bit more. But looking at it from the point of view of EITI, I think there was the belief that the EITI focuses on generating administrative reports. Yes, that's important. But having done that, the next leg is to do dissemination, which is very, very important. And we have found that to be very useful, actually. It's a more interesting part of our work than the report writing itself. And we have seen the progression from fairly ignorant communities to some communities becoming very, very knowledgeable and even taking on traditional authorities. I can cite the example of Kenyasi, for instance. I remember when we started going there, they would not even talk about the path going to the traditional authorities. But with time, it got to the point where at meetings, dissemination meetings, they will want to call the chiefs to order to say there are things they should do to support development. But then for me, the most interesting one, which supports the results of this, is assemblymen are supposed to be part of a decision-making at the local level. Interestingly, they come to dissemination meetings, and when we indicate what funds have been used for, they are asking which project. And we are like, you should have decided the project, so you should know. But if assemblymen don't know, how do you expect the ordinary man on the street to know? So I guess that's sort of the context, and so I'm not surprised at the finding.
Thank you. Let's get back to Mark. And Antiana, I'll come back to you shortly. Because the microphone is there, I'll come this way. And then we'll have a brief conversation. So Mark, I mean, if you look at the report, it's identified where the challenges are. The fact that a lot of the districts, so when it comes to citizens rating districts poorly on fiscal transparency score, which reflects low awareness, 24%. When it comes to local government effectiveness, 17.0%. Clearly, there are challenges. And you've heard the report, a brief on the report. What are you going to do about these concerns that have been raised?
Thank you. I think, as I mentioned, the need for citizen participation is key. Assemblies have, apart from these sources of revenue, we have other sources like the District Assemblies Common Fund. We have the what we call the DDF facility. At the beginning of each year, you are given an idea about how much you are expected to receive. And so you are able to, you're supposed to prepare a work plan, submit for approval before the funds are received. In the case of MDF and the other funds, you may not know how much you are entitled to at the beginning of the year. I'm sure that the findings came up with that. So we are forced to do projections. You may either do above or below. In that case, we are not concrete enough to meet the people and tell them, this is how much is coming. And so these are the things that we are expecting to plan with, so that we can even guide them. It's just at the end of the year when we are presenting our budget that we can come to the assembly, tell the assembly members that, oh, this year we received so much, we used so much from the minerals development to undertake specific projects. And so I think that is also a key area that we should be looking at. But apart from that, I think the engagement at the community level is the baseline, is the basic thing that we should ensure that we strengthen, and then make sure that people are made aware of whatever their funds are being used for.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me get to Nana. Nana, let me just find out from you, because part of the issues to do with transparency is the fact that people want to know. They want to know, they want to have regular updates. They want you to indicate what you've used the funds for. Is this something you're going to do going forward?
Thank you very much. Yes, we are going to do it. Because when they know it, I think sometimes the disturbances, the community will stand up, will not agree. If they know that this is what is going on, I think they will not even go there and do it. But if they don't know, that is where they start doing those demonstrations. So from here, we are going to do it. But all boiled down to the 2%. That is very small.
So Nana, make the point. The 2% is small. What are you proposing?
Yeah, the other time we suggested 5% when we got to Obuasi. Okay. I think that is what we suggested. And they told us they are going to work on it. But as we are speaking, it has not come. So that's our main problem. Okay. And some of the community too, nowadays, if we decide to meet them, even they will not even come. Yeah, it's also very...
Why don't they come? What's the problem?
In fact, sometimes it's like they are tired of... You decide to meet them, you meet about 20, a community of maybe about 1,000 plus. The other time we went to one community for a project to start. You only meet the chiefs and some few members. So it's also another problem. The community participation in meetings.
Is it that you don't advertise or publicize these events enough, or they're just not interested in their...
Yeah, I think so, because you announced it on the local information that maybe today we are going to meet to do this, but only few.
Okay.
Please, let me add something small to trying to mobilize people for this citizen engagement. With time, people are losing confidence in the kind of services that we provide for them. So even when you call them for meetings, people are not ready. you have to, let me say, in quote, bait people before they can. Are you coming to pay my TNT? Are you going to give me lunch? Assembly members will come and do sittings and they take sitting allowance. Are you going to give me sitting allowance before I come? If you look at the report, you realize that most of the urbanized districts, the municipals, they had lower marks because, even in the rural districts, at least if you fall on Nana or one or two people, they will be able to mobilize people for you. But in the big communities, it is very difficult getting people for even engagement. Maybe because they feel that we've sat down, what we were expecting, we didn't get, what am I coming to do again? So that readiness, that commitment to do engagement is gradually fading, and we should be finding ways and means of pulling people. And I think the best way is for people to see results of some of the decisions we've taken already. Yes, we sat down, we plan to do this and this and this. They have seen that the thing has been done. Next time when you call them, they will come. But if you come and tell me we'll put up 2 structures in your community, at the end of the period, we are not able to do it. Next time if you call me, even if I were a community member, I'll be reluctant to come. So we really need to find ways of bringing people together, and that is one of the areas that I think can be done.
Great. Let me get to, Mr. Champo on this. And, there's been call for the increase in allocation, for instance. I want your take on that, and I'll get Mr. Afe's take also, and then I'll come to Auntie Hannah. All of you the same question. And, also releasing these funds regularly. That's another aspect of the conversation. First of all, do you agree that we should increase the allocation to the districts, to the district assemblies and the LMCs?
Thank you very much. In terms of the allocation of the funds to these communities and in general through MDF, I should be quick to add that it is very, very important and timely, but it borders on the 2 key legs. There has been some studies earlier on, not only in the mining sector, but the forest.
Please speak into the microphone.
Yes, there have been some studies earlier when we started in forestry benefit sharing and others from carbon, which ought to go to the communities vis-a-vis the royalties by Professor Kwame Jan and Freddie Ajman in 2011 for the Minister of Lands and Nature. It comes out that there are some enshrined provisions in the constitutions which may have to be changed. And in the absence of that, we have to look at our acts and subsequent legislations by which we can gravitate towards ensuring an increment to these communities. Now I'll go to the nominal flows. You see, if you look at the money which goes to the OSL and having taken their part, they will give what comes to the MF through the timber mining right holders accruals, the 20%. The 20% is broken down. We see that what actually goes to the MDF is less than 10%. It's not even, it might be less than 5%, having taken what goes to the Minerals Commission, Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, Geological Survey, and what have you. So the amount of money is highly or woefully inadequate. And if you look at the projection by AWA, to the local government, we were seeing about almost 20-something million, 24 or 25, if I'm right. But when it came to the MDF, it was about 5 million or so, if you will say, well, giving us the figures. So you can see a big distinction between what actually goes to the communities and what is even going to the local government, aside what is even given to them through the OSL. So I think that, we have to look about that one. We have to think about that one. Increasing the reallocations to the MDF communities. That is very important. And I think the other leg was in relation to the rapidity.
Yeah.
You see, the monies get to the government, central government. It takes time before it is released by Ministry of Finance to the MDF, OSL, then to the MDF. Even from the MDF to the LMC is also a challenge. So in real terms, it takes a very long period of time to make projections when even you make quantities for building of a primary school, a kindergarten, cities. But the next time, it might not even suffice. So we should actually look at the rapidity with which these monies are being paid and whether we might think of making them even electronic. Like these days, if you are with the government, you can go to e-pay slip, you click on, you can see your pay slip, whether you are in the teaching field, public service, or what have you. So I think you may have to work from your findings, provide the lead. it so that we can see the rain flows. And I want to add the point. You see, even right now, in pursuit of transparency, commodity pricing and others, once the cocoa said that they want to do that, the buyers should be able to know where the cocoa is coming from, so that those who are buying will know that it's not causing deforestation. The same for timber. And like yesterday, I had the parcel from Kumasi. By the time it left the airport, it was tested on my phone that your parcel is about to leave Kumasi Airport. The next statement is go to Kotoka Tension for it. We should begin to make use of digitization, finding solutions in terms of addressing some of these challenges. Then transparency issues will be solved, accountability issues will be solved, and that is the way forward. That's my humble suggestion.
Okay, thank you. But talking about funds going into, the consolidated fund and all, if government is minded, and those who are accountants, if the government is minded and wants to release these funds early, once it gets into the consolidated fund, it can transfer into the other funds. Yes. Except that, and we're making excuses for government, aren't we? Because consistently, things that get into the consolidated fund. So every minister plays with a consolidated fund and is always making provisions for arrears. Isn't it about time we said enough? You get the money.
Yes.
So they pay, and people pay. They pay their funds, yes, taxes, royalties quarterly to you. If they pay to you, you transfer it immediately without waiting to say, oh, then you come and tell me that we had other, other responsibilities, yes, and so we used it, and then we'll pay you.
Capping law and what have you. So, yeah, I understand you see. Yeah. That is why we have CDD. And that's how I will put it. There are several ways of killing the cat. That's the essence of which the government should be compelled. In other words, we have to do some form of circumvention. If we are seeing these delays, we are a civil society which is very minded, we should be able to call dialogue, then find the rare particular solutions. Because these days, we will not confront them, but we use the mechanisms, you see, the mechanics, the procedures, to compel them to do what they have to do. And if you can provide this gravitating collective leadership and be able to do some of these things, definitely, you'll be able to compel the government to act proactively. That's my humble suggestion.
Well, CDD, there's work to be done. Let me get to Arthur. What's your take on the same question?
Thank you very much. It is true that the percentage that goes to the subnational, that is the local communities for development, is small. Some of the issues are legal. The MDF Act says that 20% will be released, of which 10% will be given to stood lands for disbursement. So we are talking of 50% of the 20%. And then another 10% will be retained by the MDF, of which the community mining will also take, I think, 40% out of that. But the reality is that, Winston, these monies can also be enhanced administratively. For instance, recently, we engaged the Chamber of Mines and we were able to increase concession rents. Once you increase that, it means that the amount of money that goes to the district also increases. Governments, in the MDF Act, they are to advise governments on the royalty rates. Recently, I heard this lithium being increased. So if the rates are increased, meaning that there will be more money. So beyond the legal issues that we have to amend the MDF Act to increase, let's say, the 20% to 30%, which the reports alludes to and says that the Chamber of Mines is suggesting that we increase the allocation to the subnational to 30%, which I agree to, but it has to be, legalized. There's the need for amendment of the law. But I believe that a lot of things can be done to increase the amounts that goes to this subnational level. What is good about this scorecard, the Mining Districts Development Scorecard, is the fact that there's dialogue that is being engendered as we are sitting here talking about the issues. For a long time, the issues are not being discussed beyond EITI platforms. There are not that many platforms to discuss. For us as an office, we'll be taking some of the issues to the districts. We have a mandate of engaging district assemblies, engaging STUs, traditional authorities. And we've been doing that, albeit the lack of budgets, but we do that. So some of these issues have to come up. Do you know about the royalty releases? What are you doing to also assist, so that everybody can bring the shoulder to the wheel? One of the things that we are implementing currently is the fact that the projects that the assemblies have embarked upon or undertaken with stolen revenue or the royalties, for that matter, should be labeled. Because once you label it, people get to see that, oh, this was financed by stolen revenue or royalty or any funds for that matter. And that is knowledge, education to all of them. There was this issue that the director talked about in terms of they cannot budget for the funds. These days, unlike the releases are on quarterly basis. For now, as we are in August, I think up to June has been released. So with what you had, let's say, last year, you can at least project and know that this is the figure that I'll be getting maybe the following year. Unlike in those years when it was erratic, and some of the years, if government's budget is so tight, they wouldn't even release it at all. But now, because of the MDF Act, it's being released. But the budgeting and what you do about it, it is up to the assemblies to also look at what they had and how they can also budget. Action plans needs to be drawn up, like Mr. Ayers said, dissemination of all this information. This is what we as OSL will take them up, and then we'll join the CDD in trying to implement these sort of ideas, which to me are very good, beyond the clarification of issues.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's get to Auntie Hannah. Yes, Auntie Hannah.
It's not a straightforward yes or no answer. Whether just to increase the quantum of monies going to the communities or decrease it. You see, I'm saying this because once mining locates in the community, and then we talk about the district realizing between 40 to 60% of revenues from mining, what it means is that about 90% of rural community people have lost their livelihoods. And once you do not account for this, communities may be hostile. I come from a mining community. They may be hostile because we have to eat, we have to drink water, we have to breathe clean air and things like that. We have to perform our rights in the forests. And so once you deprive us of some of these things, definitely there's a deficit that should be accounted for. And we are talking about this whole concept under the EITI and how the revenues should benefit. The first object of the Act is a mining community, and then the owner of lands in the community. And it talks about the traditional authorities and then the institutions. But when you come to the composition, the application of the funds, it's talking about redressing harmful effects of mining, which is for communities, promoting local level economic development, which may be for communities. But the other three points are for institutions and the rest. And this is money that is meant for community development, for communities to see the fiscal development from mining revenues. And then we go back to the composition of the local management committees, the chief executive, the traditional ruler or rulers, the representative of the regulatory organizations, then one representative each of the mining company. In Takwa, we have 3 mining companies. So straight away, the balance has tilted in the interests of projects that will go into research to promote mining, development, and things like that. Before you come to one representative of a women's group and one for youth. If you look at the EITI structure, it's explicit. It's a tripartite system. The government, the industry, and civil society groups, represented by people who are active in the sector. And so if I'm an assemblyman and I'm not aware of what the local management committee is doing, I'm justified because I'm not part of the decision-making processes. So definitely there can't be development because participation is almost zero and accountability is zero. And even transparency is zero at that level. And so it defeats the whole purpose of why the Mineral Development Fund was set up. Now, if you come to the question of the 2%, whether it's adequate or not, 2% of 10 CDs is what? It's 20% or so.
Yes, 20%.
Exactly. And so if you are struggling over something that is not adequate to start with, definitely we are not going to address any problem in the community based on the Minerals Development Fund by the allocation of the funds and how it's dispersed. I have promoted, and at the EITI level, we promoted this increase in the royalty, and it came from the 3 to 6, formerly from 3 to 12 to 3 to 6, and then 5% flat rate. My organization, we are advocating for 10% increase because that's the most reliable revenue that community people can benefit from. And so we shouldn't be struggling over whether it's 2% or 1% of 10 CDs. But then what is the quantum to be shared, which can address the problems that we experience in the communities? So we can go on like this for many years, but community people may not see the tangible effect of it, because if you build a police station in the community to harass community people, they don't see that as development. If you paint government bungalows, magistrates, you rehabilitate their premises, is it for community development? We are thinking of what to drink, the air that we breathe, whether we have incomes. Yes, you've done well with the promotion using oil palm seedlings and things like that, but where is the land to even cultivate? So we need to look at innovative ways of making this revenue relevant for the communities. As of now, we are not doing that.
And talking about innovative ways, let me start off with you, Auntie Hannah, because you've talked about that. And, as part of the recommendations, it was talking about, discretion and how we should probably think about, a Mineral Revenue Management Act, like we have for the Petroleum Revenue Management Act. Yeah. Is that something you support?
In fact, was it last November, I met with the board of the Mineral Development Fund, and this was one of my recommendations. Apart from ensuring that we are not holding meetings for communities to pay, per diems and jollof rice and things like that, we should be using local facilities. Like, if you go to my village today, there's how do they call it? FM stations, the local ones, they are there. Community centers, they are there. How many times have staff or members of the local management committees gone to Awudria, for instance, to talk about what they are doing or not doing? And so we cannot always say that the money is not enough because people cannot be grouped together. How many communities can you group? And what constitutes a community? Mr. Aye asked that. What is a community affected by mining? Are you thinking of those losing their water bodies, or where the mine is situated, or what? Those breathing the bad air and things like that. So some of these things should be explicit. And then we can have very simple ways of initiating changes that will benefit community people.
Great. Let me get you, Arthur, on the same question. Do you think there's the need for the Mineral Revenue Management Act?
Yeah, I think that will help greatly. The report talks about that one, and also talks about clarity, and then the fact that there should either be guidelines or a legal framework. We are starting with the guidelines to address some of these things. The report is talking about socioeconomic outcomes. You know, a lot of us are fixated on physical projects. Like Auntie Anna said, I have gone to inaugurate some doctor's bungalow, and then a fire station, and then at times schools. Is that what the people really want? If that is what they want, fine. But some of the things like bungalows, and the people may not want that. So there's the need to clarify the sort of outcome that we want from this mineral resources. And I believe that putting it in a legal framework, for me, it will help. But now we have a draft guideline to help at least. We'll subject it to stakeholder analysis and then fine-tune it so that we can start working on it. You know, and we are mandated to monitor those developments. So I think we've been doing it over the years with the ministry, where we go to look at the physical projects that have been undertaken. But we need to really ask ourselves whether those projects may result in alternative livelihoods or may actually help those people. It is another talk for another time. But what I can say is that this report really has touched on a lot of things that we need to really work on. And as an office, we are taking the report as our Bible. And then we'll be trying to implement some of the sessions that can help immediately.
Great.
Thank you.
Let me get to a champion, then I would get to distinguished guests who are here. Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it is very important, it has been said by Madam and my brother, it is very important if you have the Minerals Development Revenue Act, that will give the binding force of the law so that we all act within our limitations. It's very important so that there's no use of discretionary powers and you don't define a community as the way you want to define the community. But in respect of the guidelines, we took steps to look at the Land Use Planning Act. Then we also looked at what is a community under mining. That is a community in which mining, a contiguous area in the district in which mining takes place, or which is defined as a mining community, as by the MDF board. So for the funds to the MDF, we are very clear on it. But as to what goes to the local government, and etc., it is important because the DCE has a wide coverage, as he was talking about, in terms of usage, security, and what have you. That one too may be, in the absence of a guideline, it has to be well defined to them so that they can then make sure that the money actually goes to the impacted areas, as Madam was saying. I think that's what I'll add on for the moment.
Okay, great. Just hold on for me now because I need to give our distinguished ladies and gentlemen a chance to ask a question. So just show by hand if you want to ask a question, and I'll get the microphone to you. Okay, let me just start walking. And yes, I'll get to everybody who wants to ask a question.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Moderator. The CDD has done the yeoman's work, and in appreciation of what they have done, shall we show in the usual way by clapping for them? You see, when we talk about minerals royalty, some people, of course, accuse we, the chiefs, of collecting huge sums of money and then even mismanaging the money. They don't know that even sometimes, apart from what should we say, the meager money that we get, we sometimes even use it profitably. By when you go to Aquaculture Division, for example, I served there. There came a time that we recognized that we had no secondary school there. So we used part of the minerals royalty in establishing a Sarbidiako Secondary School. When you go to Formula, they use part of it to renovate the palace. When you go to Biase, they are now constructing the palace, and they use part of it. And the CDD the report has even made it clear that the percentage given to the sub-local area is just a peanut. Government collects company taxes. The company they collect other taxes from mining companies, and then when it comes to mineral royalty, collecting 80%, we think is unfair. You see, the government is not being fair to people in the mining areas, and so as this report has come and actually recommending that it should be increased to 30%. Am I right? 30%. I'm suggesting that it should be 40 instead of 30. I'm suggesting. You see, and so when it is reviewed, and you made mention of another legislation being introduced. What is that? Minerals what? Aha. You see, it is true that will be able to force the government to review it. Because when we make any other recommendation, the government will not just back out. So true what you are saying. If that legislation comes into force, then of course we will be in a position to get something sufficient to be sent to the local level so that the LMC, the LMC also will get sufficient. Now, when we talk about LMC, in fact, I'm very sorry for them. In fact, the reason is that they are children without parents. They are children without parents. They are children without parents because they have been established. They have no accommodation. They have no accommodation. They have no resource capacity. You see, they have no resource capacity. They haven't got accountants. They haven't got other expertise. You see, expect people to help them. And we say they should perform. How can they perform? You see, let me come to this thing. You ask a question. The rural people, the rural assemblies, they have performed better than the urban assemblies. The reason is that the people in the rural area, they take pride in discussing their own issues. They take pride in taking part in assembly activities. The reason is that when you invite, say, Nana, to do this or that, now, he gets to know that he will be able to improve upon his CV. You see, I'm this, or I'm working this. And when you come to the urban centers, these people, of course, are business-oriented. He's thinking about his business, and so he has no time to come and then serve. You see, that is the reason why the rural people, of course, the rural assemblies are doing better than the urban areas. And you see, another issue with the chiefs. Nowadays, when a chief invites anybody, and that fellow refuses because of the Supreme Court ruling, you see, the fellow, of course, will not come. And then this matter is resting with Parliament. Parliament is not doing anything about it. So now when you beat Gongon to assemble people to do communal labor, they will not come. And so that is also another reason.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. Please, you tell us your name and the institution you represent, then you go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Emmanuel Obi Adowa. I work for Comca Ghana. We are actually operating here in Ghana from the Western North region. Yes. So my key takeaway from the report is that the assemblies are not doing well and the citizens are not doing well. The concern is that most of the times at the local level, we are more concerned about the structural issues. We need to increase this. We need to adopt to these rules and regulations and laws. You know, structural issues also takes long. It's not a one-day thing. I think at the local level, there are some social and individual level, maybe behavior change systems that has to be looked at. There are instances where the LMCs are doing their own thing somewhere, and the assemblies are doing their own thing somewhere. That collaboration is not there. We are talking about citizen engagement. There are other advantages that maybe the LMC and the assemblies can take. There are other citizen engagement avenues through some NGOs in their districts, through even the district assemblies themselves. We can capitalize on them and make some of these details known to the citizens. How can we build a whole classroom block and naming it, spending a whole money building a classroom block and naming for the citizen to be informed is a problem. So I think there are some local level things that we can do without even looking at money and structural issues. We still have a lot to do at the local level. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, since I'm here, let me just start from here.
Thank you very much. My name is Nkrumah Razak. I work with Zak Foundation Ghana in Brim North District, where the research or the FAT score says that the Brim North was the first. By the way, I want to draw attention to subsection 4.2.1. 4.2.1. It talks about the findings and then observation. When you open the page is 4. So when you come to 4.2.1, that is what I'm talking about. It talks about the findings and the observation. It shows clearly that the total amount paid to GRA, the mining company paying to the GRA and transfer to Mineral Commission, and then the disbursement also starts from there. The facts, or what I'm seeing here shows that there has been a reduction. It means that the actual amount received reduced before it gets to the end user of the money. So I want to ask, what is the reason behind that? If that is what the finance talks about, then it means that there is no transparency in the disbursement of the fund. Another one I will talk about is that Nana was talking about the community organizing, demonstration, and the other stuff. They know that they receive royalties. One thing I can say about Brim North, Newmont is operating there. When Newmont established there, they decided that they want to establish an organization, which that organization is solely based on the community, look at the activities that the community is doing. So what they do is that any gold that they mine, 1 bar, they give them some percentage. So they pay royalties to the organization, and the organization used that money to develop the community. So because of that, I can say that the chief in Abrim they are doing very well. And I urge you, Joy News, and the other media to go to Primnorth and find out what the chiefs are doing, because they use their money for the better things in the district. So I think let me leave it this way, and then.
Yes, thank you very much.
Right, thank you very much. I'm Louis Champon, and representing the communities from Obuasi. Unfortunately, the general performance of Obuasi Municipal with respect to the utilization was very low, but there are generally the challenge of the 38% with the whole 8 MMDAs. And it seems the major actions undertaken was only the formation and launching of the local management committee and nothing more. And again, the planning and financial management for the activities of the local management committee is seen rather to be undertaken by the MMDA, the assembly. And it is exemplified in the sense that even presiding member and some other key assembly members from the communities, 2 communities that had projects, did not even know those projects are linked to the Minerals Development Fund. And that was a bit worrying. And I think for supporting the recommendations, it will be useful that we increase the transparency and in the identification and appointment of the people that go to the LMC, as well as strengthening the capacity of the LMCs on project and financial management, because they have a mandate by the law to monitor the procurement and then execution of these projects, but they have very limited capacity. Again, we should be able to adopt social accountability as a national policy strategy for citizen government engagement, so as at least per law, the citizens will have the opportunity to ask the right questions and engage the public, stakeholders accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you. It has been addressed. Okay. Let me get here. Yes, you. 1 minute. There you go.
Thank you very much. So I have a question, but then, sorry, I'm Edmond Boatin. I work with the Forte State. And it has been, I have a question, but then first of all, I have a comment. And it was a question to the GRA, but the GRA is not here, so I'll make that comment. A lot has been said about the quantum that goes to the communities overall, as in what has to be shared. And it is inadequate, very woeful. But the GRA is the one that collects the royalties from these companies, mining companies. But it doesn't seem that the GRA is up to task, because the recent Aegis reports indicates that 5 companies were not able to pay their taxes. They are owing about 73 million in taxes. So if this amount has not been able to be collected, then eventually it will translate into what goes into the mining communities. So I think that has to be looked at. And coming here, I thought about asking the GRA why they've not been able to collect this amount of money. Because, as I said, that would then go determine what the district assemblies get. That said, I want to ask this question. It's about the legal structure. Even if you're able to do the Minerals Revenue Act, how would that affect the current legal structure? Because, as you mentioned, Mr. Champon, the MDF needs amendment. And you also mentioned that the constitutional, there needs to be a constitutional reform before the 10%, it can even be increased. So if you have a Mineral Revenue Act, how would that be able to impact the percentage that we have now? I don't know if it's clear. If it's not clear, then you let me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm back for myself from Asotifi North, Kenya. Yeah, I would call for more collaboration and partnership between
the various assemblies and the LMCs, because each assembly has a medium-term development plan which they implement over a 4-year term. So in the course of coming up with the plan and the medium-term expenditure framework, if they work with the LMC and let the local community know that these are our revenue sources, including what comes to the LMC, they will be able to come out with projects and programs that should be funded from the money that comes to LMC and for that and the DC Assembly, so that at any point in time, they will be aware of what the money will be used for, within the medium-term plan and for that the medium-term expenditure framework, so that at any point, if anybody goes to the community and they are properly engaged at the planning stage and the budgeting stage, they will be able to tell you that, oh, from what we have been told from the assembly or by the assembly, this is what we expect our community to benefit from mineral royalties, and for that matter, any amount that comes to the LMC. Thank you.
Thank you. I think there's a last question here.
Thank you. My name is Kwesi Nimo Jr. I work with the Africa Education Watch. The finding from the report that citizens' participation in such discussions of communal development is low in the urban centers actually resonates with our own research findings conducted in the Tema and Medina municipalities. It turns out that in these areas, although there are the persons who seem to be involved in most of the things in the communities, these same people don't see returns in their engagement in these gatherings, because in the first place, they know, some of them know that these are the amounts that the municipalities or the districts garner. But because they don't see it returning in developmental projects, it could be in any other way, they don't see how their involvement would enhance it. But then also, we believe that the participation of local NGOs to garner the voices in the communities would be very helpful, because in that way, they would also support the call we are making for the increment in the allocations, because only the leaders can't push for that call. So we'd want to find out, I personally want to find out from the Nananom, what is the involvement of the local NGOs, or how do they even engage them in some of these advocacies that they themselves even want to push?
Thank you very much. So we'll start from the last question. How Nananom engage the local NGOs in their own advocacy. So let's get the microphone to Nana. Who has the microphone? Yes, just very close to Nana, so Nana can address. Nana here, Nana Somia, who's here, he would address that. And then we would move on. Yes.
Okay. Normally we engage them by informing them. For instance, if they are coming to do a program, I can't remember there was NGO, so through that we informed them about the LMC. We were doing a project, we informed them, but it is not all the NGOs. I think now it has come to our notice. We are going to do our best to engage all the NGOs in our municipalities, and I think somebody also suggested that we have a local information or an answer. We can also contact them so that at least all this information will get to the communities. So initially, we are not doing it most. So as it has come to our notice with the help of CDD, we are going to at least start doing it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, Mark.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think the role of the civil society organizations is very key in all these things. As they are very good at community mobilization. That is their specialty. So I believe we should engage them. Unfortunately, some of the districts don't have enough of them. If you come to my district, I only have SCIMP for now. So every activity that we do, you realize that SCIMP is actively represented. But I want to talk about the LMC.
Okay.
I believe that the LMCs were established or were formed because of some of these issues that were coming up. It was as if most of the MDF or student funds that the Assembly was controlling didn't have the community touch. So LMCs were established to ensure that they identify their own needs at their own level and then implement them. And so if you look at their mode of operations, LMCs don't go through the bureaucratic system that we assemblies go through. For instance, if they want to undertake a project, they don't go to the advert, selection of contractor. No, they do their own thing. In my district, my engineer is somehow attached to them. Anytime they have a project, engineer advises them on that. I have an assistant director who makes sure all their reports, all their submissions are done. So my eye is seriously on the LMC. Let me take the advantage to talk about the Mineral Revenue Management Act that we're talking about. The LMC, they have their own guidelines. I think the Mineral Development Fund Secretariat developed it for them. There is a guideline that directs them on how to operate their membership, their term of office, and others. But then, if you look at the law itself, if we are able to put all these things as a law, the guideline is only for the LMC, but there is no guideline for the district assemblies. I'm sure a law of this nature will bring all these guidelines together, and it mandates the various institutions on what to do. Sorry, I have to come back to what Mr. Atta was saying about the fact that these days releases are done on quarterly basis. I wonder if Nananum, that is what is going on, because for some months you may not have any release. So you may be forced to go to the Regional Land Secretariat. Sometimes you have to go and plead that Assembly is struggling. There's an activity or there's a project we are doing that we are not getting the funds. So sometimes we need to plead. So there is no authority on them. The monies are released to you as and when they feel it's coming. So some of these acts will put pressure on these institutions, not only them, but even us, on how to operate, how to spend, how to direct our spending.
Okay.
Thank you very much. But let me gear off a little bit. You know, in this gathering, I've not heard of any mining company represented here. I don't know whether it is for a strategic reason.
The Chamber of Mines was here.
Okay.
But they had another engagement.
Okay.
And so they had to leave.
Because we kept talking about increasing the royalties. My fear is that, you know, apart from all these things that they pay, they also do their CSR. And some of the corporate social responsibility things that they do are 10 times bigger than these ones.
The Ghana Chamber of Mines actually agree that should be increased. And so the report talks about that. And when I met their representative, he told me that, this one, we are for it. So
my little fear was that maybe they may run away from their CSR when these things are increased to some level. That was my fear.
Anyway,
but if they agree,
let's begin to wrap up. Let's start off with Mr. Ayi. I mean, we're wrapping up. So if you want to address, yes, I'll get to you so you address the question. But we are wrapping up. Yes.
Let me quickly correct it. He was talking about increasing royalty. You are talking about increasing the allocation to the local area. The chamber certainly would not be agreeable to increasing royalty. They will be agreeable to increasing their location. So maybe we need to distinguish that. But quickly to move on, I would like to talk about the issues that have been raised in the context of perception, which is really the basis of the report we are looking at, which can reflect reality. However, I'll also talk about intent, what was intended, and how does that relate to reality? So we need to look at those three. And once we look at those three, it will help us a lot to move forward. Perception at the local level, are we getting enough? Are we getting what we ought to get? And I'll agree to a large extent, no. Earlier on, Antiana and myself were discussing this, and we're saying it's even worse with illegal mining now. And we ask the question, do mining communities have a future? That's the question we need to ask. Really, what is government intent? I mentioned earlier that intent is to ensure that at the local level, these resources get to promote development, but is it doing so? That's a question we need to ask as well. You asked about the law. Should we put in place a mineral revenue management law? I believe that streamlining the law is important. If you look at the current MDF Act, it requires that there should be regulations. Unfortunately, the regulations have not been passed. We would have addressed some of the issues we're talking about today. We need to do that. But government is even talking about this Mineral Revenue Management Act. It's already in discussion.
Okay.
I know that that's the case. But then going forward, in terms of a quantum, Antiana mentioned some assemblies. Actually, they get the most of the MDF funds. And even there, when she converted it to per person, it was negligible. The rest of the assemblies don't even get anything close to that. So in terms of quantum, it's a big issue. It needs to be addressed. So then if you talk about 2% of that, I mean, it's virtually nothing. So we need to look at that big question of quantum. But then I want to make a distinction very quickly. I think we are blending the two and it's a bit confusing. The Mineral Development Act presents what is traditionally the Mineral Development Fund, where funds go largely to the assembly, to Nanam, etc. The thinking is that they are to drive development, so they should get a large part of that kind of allocation. And so that's how it happens. But there's been the argument that a lot of times it gets into a big pot like at the central government level, and therefore not much development happens in the mining community as such. So that's how come the Mining Community Development Scheme with its local management scheme was put in place. Now the thinking was, you have people in the area who typically should be development conscious as far as their local area is concerned. Talk about the assembly, talk about traditional authorities, talk about the community people represented by the youth, by the women, and of course, you'd want to bring in the mining company which will bring in funds. So the thinking was to put together a local management committee which would then be able to determine more or less, let's say independently, what is development for our area. Then government provides a little bit of a seed money, but like my brother said, the mines themselves spend quite a lot. Indeed, let me say that there is a push to legislate how much they should spend in communities now. It was voluntary in the past, but it's a push to make it mandatory now. But it is expected that they being part of a community and deciding what is development, then they will put some more money into that pot. Nananum, who then belong to it to decide what is development, will also put some of their funds into it so that together they can decide it. I agree that probably the selection process has not led to selecting people who will be able to achieve that. And like Nana said, they are like a baby without a father. Because we try to create an entity separate from the assembly. And in doing that, created another problem. But I'm not too sure I agree with Antiana. We discussed it earlier. But then Takwa is quite unique. They have 3 different mines. Most mining communities will have 1 mine. So you have 1 mining company represented, and all the others are 1 each. So if they come together, probably putting their ideas together, they should be able to define what's development and champion it. There are issues, yes, and have been raised. I think we all should put our heads to it collaboratively to see how can we improve the reality and achieve what was intended.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ayi. Mark, finally, I'll get to you, just Mark, your closing comments. We're wrapping up.
Well, I'm happy my district was one of the pilot districts for this exercise. And I want to say even some of the recommendations we've started implementing them. The accountability for us has already started, and we are meeting the community members, and it's bringing out. Initially, it was hostile, but now we are understanding each other, and I think that is how it should go. When they come to hear that, hey, so you had all this money and you didn't do anything. We are now starting from this level. Let's all build from it. And I believe with that, I think our transparency and then open governance will go to higher levels. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nana.
Thank you very much. First, I'll thank CDD for bringing this project. This will make us on track. And I think when we get to the House, we are going to do our homework. Although we were, I think, 5th, we are not last, but we are going to, we are going to improve upon it, so that next time at least we'll be on top. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nana.
Thank you very much. I think my questions have been answered perfectly by Mr. Ayi. He happens to be around during the inauguration of the committee for the development of the guidelines on the advice of the minister. I think I'll agree with Nana that the LMCs, they are like children without parents, they are orphans. But CDD is helping us in the process of adoption. So as a lawyer, I think they have come before me. They want to adopt the LMCs. So CDD, we thank you very much. The adoption process is on course. And finally, we are going to give the LMCs to you to develop the capacity, the civil societies within the communities, as was you alluded to that. We need more of them, more of the engagement and the community engagement as well. And I think there was, Mr. Ayi also talked about the fact that the intentions are very good. You know, in Ghana, we are very good in the development of the policies, but when it comes to the deployment and implementation, then it becomes the challenge. Right now, I told Mr. Awal that we have to do some planting. The nurseries are ready. The rains are not coming. In Ashanti region, Achoman, Punya, and the Sutifi North. Even the west might be, the north might be west. How do you plant? You see, so you have to suspend the planting and wait for a phone call from the communities by which you can go and plant. So we have set the tone for the LMCs to be very operational and supportive, which CDD is going to help all of us to do that. And on the project selection, very quick, within 2 seconds, you see, there's an annex. This is the project guidelines, the LMC guidelines, which we will make them available with time, I think, as we do the capacity building. There are useful project development tips. Consult widely within the community, refer to MMDA development plans, select projects that will spin off effects, operate local jobs, improve health, improve education, coordinate with new or other community-based organizations, any other considered by LMC from time to time. It talks about project effectiveness, sustainability, the impacts, and the involvement and others. So all these things, as Mr. Ayi said, with the intentions were there. But this is the case, the LMCs have been set up, the monies are not been coming because from the statutory consolidated fund, it's not getting to the MDF for them to release to the LMCs. So these are the challenges. So this is what I will say for the moment, that we hope to gravitate with the findings of this double work from CDD-Ghana. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Arthur.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. In wrapping up, let me talk about some few issues. Nana said that people accuse the chiefs of misusing their royalties. The Constitution says that the royalties to the stools are for the maintenance of the stool in keeping with their status. That is what the law says. But some have done projects, scholarship scheme, and so on with them. So, Nana, when they accuse you, tell them this. That is what we've been discussing is largely the assembly's portion of the royalties. That is what this report is about. Another person said there's reduction in the quantum of money released from all the sectors. It's true for Ministry of Finance, before it comes to MDF, there's reduction, capping policy, and so on. From stool lands, we have been working with the EITI, and we normally meet to reconcile figures because releases are for periods. Maybe 2020 releases. Some may come in 2021, the last quarter. So if you are not careful, you may not be able to. So when these things happen, we meet and reconcile them, and then we ensure that payments are done. And Honorable, the money's not coming. When releases are done, it's not every company or every area that gets some per that release. So even though you may have received some releases, maybe yours may not, but I'll give you my number. If you face challenges, let us know so that from at least head office, we can follow up some of these things for you. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very, very much. Mr. Arthur, yes, Auntie Hannah.
Thank you very much. As a way of improving the whole mining regime and also making sure that communities are benefiting from the revenues, we need as the LMCs and then the fund operators to put this question down. Why are we mining? and what can we achieve within the next 10 years for us to know exactly what we'll make use of in terms of utilization of the revenues. Again, we should also think seriously about the alternatives. Today, the district assemblies are receiving 40–60% of revenues from mining. And this is not a lifelong activity. So in the next 10 years that the revenue would not come, how are the assemblies going to operate? And you're talking about people being difficult today. When it comes to that, you see Westerns, because they will not see any benefit, but the legacy issues would be there for them. And then as a last but one, the disconnect between the activities of the LMCs and also the district or representatives of the district communities, the assembly members. I think it's something that needs to be addressed immediately for community people to have development that is more participatory. Because if you go building, I don't want to go there, but some of the things that the monies were used for do not have any benefits for communities. Rather, the development is impoverishing them and keeping them under bondage. And so those disconnects should be addressed. And I would say that we did some research in the Prestia and Kenya Sea areas. And the people were looking for interventions in education, health, job securities, and things like that. And maybe we need to look critically at these areas of intervention. And the last point is for the industry to absorb their costs totally. Once they do not absorb their costs, and some of the costs is externalized, the social development that we seek to see in the communities may not happen. And so the management of these committees, please look more at what will benefit communities rather than what goes into research, what goes into improving facilities that would expand mining to the detriment of whether communities are drinking potable water or not. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much for joining us this morning. Hey, did I say morning? This afternoon. Mrs. Hannah Usu-Kranting, Surveyor Ebenezer Arthur, Kwabne Champon Boache, Nana Kojo-Somia, and Mr. Evans McAndor and Mr. Ben Ayu. Let's give them a huge round of applause. Thank you very, very much. Which means we're getting to the end of the program. We'll take some closing remarks from Dr. Kojo Asante. But before then, the chairperson would also give us, her final remarks. I see there are many of you who are confused. Don't worry. It's how I decided to arrange it. So let me get to the chairperson, Clara Kasati, to give us her final remarks.
Okay. Thank you very much. I don't know if I have any remarks to give after all the discussions that we've had, except to sum up what we've discussed already, which is that we've looked at the reality. I don't think when we ask our question ourselves, have we done what we set out, have we achieved what we set out to achieve with mining? I think we all know the answer because the evidence is in our face. We cannot run away from the evidence, and the evidence is that we have not done well. Even the very first, the district that has been first hasn't passed. It didn't even get a pass mark. So we have not done well. What is also interesting is that, interestingly, when we found oil, the reason we passed the Petroleum Revenue Management Act is that we were learning from the mistakes with the mining industry. But we then behaved as if we stopped mining. And then all of the focus was put on petroleum. How do we manage the petroleum revenue that we are getting? And we didn't seem to put as much into looking at as to what we are doing with our extractive sector, which is particularly important because largely our petroleum is offshore, but the mining is within communities and the impact it has within the communities. I think for me it's very important that we come back to look at the mining communities. We all know by our law, the minerals belong to all of the people of Ghana. But we all also know that not all of the people of Ghana face the same kind of challenges with respect to mining communities. So we must be able to isolate mining communities at this point in our development and invest into looking at how to lessen the impact of the resource that comes from their communities for all of our benefits. The good thing is that this gives us an indication as to where we need to look. There are recommendations that we need to discuss, but invariably, I think this is the time that we need to have a national debate as to what is happening to our mining communities and what do we need to do better so that these mining communities can also improve development outcomes and inclusive growth. I believe that is what we mean when we say inclusive development. Thank you very much.
Dr. Kojo Asante, please give us the closing remarks. He's Director of Policy Engagement and Partnerships at CDD-Ghana.
Thank you very much, Winston, and Chair, my Vice Chair of CDD. I think for me, just to echo what others have said here, after over 100 years of mining, to go to our mining communities and see that some of them are doing worse than places where there's no mining is actually a travesty. I mean, it's the fact that it doesn't register in our consciousness that we are failing and failing badly when we see these things. It's really upsetting. And sometimes I don't know what it is that has to happen to make us sit up and say that this cannot be accepted. You know, so this effort is a way to bring us back to that consciousness that we cannot accept the situation as it is. All the arrangements we put in place and all of that, and we go to the places, and as I said, it's worse than places where we don't have these resources. And that is simply a resource scarce situation where the resource actually comes to make your life worse. So we need to really think about it seriously. The other thing that has emerged from engaging on this project is just the simple process of providing information to citizens. I mean, we are in a digital age, and yet it seems like just basic information is even difficult for citizens to get. How is that possible? That in all these communities, people don't even know that something like this comes to their community. So we should ask ourselves some really hard questions about how are we doing this sort of development. It seems like nobody's taking responsibility for providing citizens with information about what is going on in their own communities. If it's a systems problem, we need to fix it. But every time we do this, we used to do this with district league tables, and it's the same thing. So we should take information dissemination systems at the assembly level, at the community level very seriously. And I think the media is also here. How is it that the media is also not even getting this information and disseminating it? The other thing is on transparency. If the assemblies on their own are putting these things out, I'm sure by now, all the things that we have now come to develop, people feeling comfortable to ask questions and get more information would have already been set up. And together, those districts would have developed better. Everybody would be on the same page. So how are the assemblies, providing transparency in the activities that they are undertaking in the districts? We have laws, and we have beautiful laws. It's all on the Local Government Act. It's all there. But still, we are not getting transparency. And the same way, we are not getting accountability. So I just think it's just to say that this little exercise is always to remind us that we can really do more. And it's not really complicated. It's not a lot of money or anything. It's just having the consciousness that we are supposed to be serving the citizens. That's why the assembly is there. That's why the mineral resource is there. So what are we doing to make sure that citizens are actually being served? And then lastly, this is just a small opening as to some of the issues we are facing in the mining districts. Now we are talking about Galamsey, community mining, how you're going to regulate all of these things. With all the externalities that are being generated with Galamsey, who is going to bear the burden of addressing that problem? So somebody is just causing problems, and yet they are not contributing to resolving the problems in the districts. So I am expecting that hopefully this will be the beginning of extending the scope of our monitoring to what now we call community mining. I don't know all the regulations that's going to go around it. But if you are contributing to the problem, you have to contribute to the solution. So that's another area that we really need to look at. So it's just to say thank you very much to all the community members, citizens who contributed to this report, to the district assembly, to Nananum, to all our experts, CSOs that have been engaging on this, those who are here today, you know, our CDD team, Awal and Emmanuel and others who have been working so hard to put this report together. What it just tells us is that if we are diligent in monitoring periodically, we would always have a better opportunity of addressing our problems than everybody just, you know, staying in their corner and waiting till there's a crisis and then we'll come and address it. It's not easy to do this job without resources, but we have to find a way that the systems are easy and they can provide the kind of information that we need so that it doesn't need a CDD to come and go around to generate this report before we get things done. So thank you very much for all your time, and I hope that the conversation continues, particularly as political parties are promising to solve many problems. I think we should add this problem to the list. But not discuss it as just about the mining revenues, but also what are we going to do with minerals, what are we going to do with our mining communities, what are we going to do about Galamsey, and all of those things that are damaging our environment and our resources. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kojo Asante. So the panelists can please resume their seats. Thank you very much, all of you. Let's give them a round of applause. And so you see a QR code. There you can scan that and evaluate the program. So please scan the QR code and evaluate the program. Thank you so much for making time to join us right from the morning till this time. There will be lunch, and then we can continue with the networking session. My name is Winston Amoah. Thank you very much. Do have a lovely day. Bye-bye. So please don't forget, yes, you can scan that and evaluate the program. And there's also going to be lunch, and then the networking and conversations will continue.